All right, hello YouTube. Welcome to number 16 for Wizard and Glass book club wise. Yeah, we're here tail end of July. We're in the afterglow of a new movie that just is taking the world by storm, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, ready to dive into some Wizard and Glass. We're chugging right along. I actually also did some calculations. I'll wait till we start the podcast, but I went and looked at some of the back end stuff to figure out how much of the percentage we could take out. So
Okay.
I have an accurate accounting for where we're actually at.
Oh,
so
excellent.
let's go ahead and hit the intro and get started into the main podcast, though, because right now only the YouTube people are listening.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland, to the Dark Tower came.
We are content, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to our 16th book club for Wizard and Glass, as well as the larger show Dark Tower Palaver. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And yeah, we're here chugging along through Wizard and Glass, book 4 of the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series. Of course, we're very sad we haven't seen Rhea in a while. Hopefully we can fix that in this episode.
No. No, we're not sad. We are not sad.
I know I speak for
No.
you and the audience.
No.
That we're all missing Rhea so much.
No.
But let's go ahead and hit the intro stuff real quick. First of all, there is no spoiler warning. With these book clubs, we stay where we're at or before. We don't jump ahead. Also, the only caveat to that is at the very tail end of the episode, there will be a isolated part of the episode where we can talk about spoilers and how whatever we cover today may apply to the larger series. That hasn't happened as much for this book because it is a pretty self-contained story in this flashback, but we do still have that section. But you'll be warned both visually and audibly before you get into that. So if you haven't finished the books, this is a safe episode, probably 99% of the way through. So, and you'll be warned before we get into the danger zone. Next up, if you want to find the podcast, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, or pretty much any podcasting service of your choice. So if you want to subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those, we'd appreciate that. Then if you can, if you want to find us over here on YouTube, over here at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver, you can join the shows live, listen live, be part of the conversation, send emojis in the chat if you want. That's always fun.
Stop it.
But if you are here on the YouTube side, if you want to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, the notifications are awesome. It lets you know when we're going live, as well as if there's any change to our schedules, you'll be notified. And then subscribing and liking always helps the evil North Central Positronics that, of course, runs Google, because we all know that Google's just a facade for North Central Positronics, right?
Did you just call him evil?
And Skynet. I mean, it's all one thing. And in this podcast, we're going to call it North Central Positronics. It's behind it all. Apple, Amazon, Google, it's all North Central Positronics.
I'm just shocked that you called him evil.
Who? Google?
North Central Positronics. I didn't think you wanted to get on Blaine's bad side.
Yeah, that's true. He is quite vindictive,
Yeah.
although he's destroyed now. We don't have to worry about him anymore.
Yeah, sure.
Then if you want to find the show notes, you can do that over at darktowerpalaver.com. There's no show notes for the book club episodes, but if you want to go to darktowerpalaver.com anyway, there's links for everything that's Dark Tower Palaver. That's kind of the spoke at the center of, or the point at the center of all the spokes of Dark Tower Palaver. questions for new listeners. If you're a new listener and you want to send an email and maybe you don't know the best way to do that, we have questions there. You can answer one of them, all of them, or anywhere in between. We found that's a good primer for introductory emails. Then if you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. You could join us on our Discord server 24/7, as well as we do our monthly hangouts. So that is that. If you want to contact the show, Peter can let you know how to do that.
Best way is through email. You can email us at show@darktowerpalaver.com. And then we have our social medias. We got Twitter. It's @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. And then our Blue Sky is @DarkTowerPalaver.bsky.social. Our Facebook is facebook.com/DarkTowerPalaver. Instagram is DarkTowerPalaver, all one word, no spaces. And then check out our merchandise. It's tpublic.com/users/DarkTowerPalaver. Get yourself a hashtag Tad is Terrible sticker, shirt,
Or the
pillow,
classic logo.
and everything. Deck yourself out in the truth that is Tad is terrible.
Which, of course, that is false.
And that's not true. It's absolutely true. I mean, there's a reason that it exists.
It's slanderous. I mentioned before we went live on the podcast side on the YouTube, I teased that I went and did, since the last episode, I went through and found what the percentage of the book is. But before you get into all the nonsense, like in this case, there's an intro or a
section of the Wolves of the Kala.
Wolves of the Kala, like a teaser. There's also a Sleeping Beauties teaser, and then an about the author and all that shit. At the end of this episode, I guess I didn't calculate it from the beginning, but at the end of this episode, with where we leave off, we will pretty much be, if you want to round, basically at 45% of this book done.
Just under halfway.
44.99%. So I was like, I'm rounding up. It's 45%. So at the end of this episode, we will be 45% of the way through this book. So Audible. Kindle is a little bit deceptive because of all that extra mumbo jumbo there. Shows us at 43 right now, or 43 at the end of this episode. So we can shave a few percentages off there. So let's dive right in. We are currently in chapter 9, which chapter 9 is titled Citgo. And this is actually, I think, the longest chapter, at least in this section, because we've got 4 sections. And I think we talked about at the very beginning that the front and end ones are both like 5 chapters, but the middle ones both have 10 chapters. But as I was cycling through, chapter 9 here is really long. Like, we actually started into 9 last episode, and then this episode, we're going fully through 9, and we're not even all the way through it. This whole episode's 9, and we still have quite a ways to go. So it's a long chapter.
It's going off of sub chapters. I know that we should be getting through about 9 to 10 sub chapters today, and so you're saying that even that won't take us through.
No, there's 18 sub chapters,
and we're only going to about 15, if I remember right.
Yeah, so next episode, hopefully we'll cross over into chapter 10. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. We are starting out in sub chapter 6. So let's go ahead, and also hello everyone in the chat. It looks like Peter mentioned it in there.
Yeah.
But we got Agamorphy, we got Max and Zach all in the chat so far, as well as anyone else that might be listening and not chatting. That's always a thing as well. And then of course Peter's in there too.
Fourth Legacy is Ben, not Zach.
Oh, that's right. ZT
is Zach.
See, that's why
I keep a list.
That's why
those ones that have given us the names.
That's why I don't trust my memory. That's why I should write things down.
That's why I do write things down.
I should write things down. I really should. And also, I've spent like enough that would make Roland very ashamed in all the small notebooks, like little pocket-sized notebooks. Dude, I bought so many of those over the years, and I usually use like a couple pages of them. Then I stop carrying them with me, and then they just lay around gathering dust. So Roland would be ashamed of my note-taking capabilities. But yeah, we're starting in subchapter 6. Let's go ahead. I guess the reason I wanted to point it out too is it has been pretty rare recently too, where we're actually in one subchapter for the whole episode.
Yeah.
Like usually we're crossing over, which always bothers.
Chapter, not subchapter.
Chapters always bothers me because I like to be self-contained, you know, but they never fit right for our podcast length. So let's go ahead and jump on into 6 though. So Susan worked herself hard the rest of Sunday, which yes, that is one that
Not Sunday.
No.
We had I double checked that one.
I checked it
wait.
in my hard copy too.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I've seen there have been times where Kindle will have typos.
Yeah.
And I've checked it with ones when I have a hard copy of something that it's not in the hard copy, or the audiobook isn't the same, but it's just Kindle. I don't know what it is, because I would assume you're just like scanning it into like Kindle in some way, or
Yeah.
But no, there every once in a while there's some weird ass typos. So I looked this up, and indeed it is, and it's weird because I don't think I've ever noticed. I think I've always just breezed so quickly as I'm
Sunday.
reading or listening. I think I
Yeah.
just hear Sunday. So another one of those small things you discover on these book clubs when you're actually going line by line. So mucking out the stables, carrying water, washing the steps. Aunt Cord watched all this in silence with the expression of mingled doubt and amazement. Susan did not care how her aunt looked. She only wanted to exhaust herself to avoid another sleepless night. It was over, and Will would know it too, which was good. Let it be done. Because where we left off last time.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah,
we need to
is
summarize.
she basically had a sleepless night and then finally got up, wrote a note saying, "No, I'm not going to meet you." To
because Roland sent her a note saying, "Hey, we need to meet. I need to talk to you."
yeah,
And she's like torn whether or not she's going to meet him or not. Gets up, writes the note saying, "No, I won't meet you." Then she's able to sleep, and she does it all crafty, like sneaking the note into Alan's bag
yeah,
for him. Yeah.
Indeed. So yeah, I guess we should have set up. But yeah, that's kind of what we're on the heels of here. So my note: call me a prick, but the first time I kind of hoped that she was right and this would be the end of it. I didn't believe it, but I hoped, because there's no way that this can end well. So as much as it might suck for the two Gaga kids to have their hearts broken, I would take that over what I suspect is coming. I mean, we've had enough like hints in previous books that Susan doesn't seem like she doesn't. I don't know what the opposite of tragic is. Like non-tragic. She doesn't strike me as a non-tragic figure from some of the weird throwaway lines that we've had about the girl in the window, all the way dating back into book 1, especially if we have the revised version.
Yes.
Had some mention of her. So, and all of those gave us kind of a vibe of she probably doesn't live happily ever after. So,
right.
And then just
well, also,
everything
just in this book alone, Roland's like trepidation going into the story, like, you're going to go running and screaming into the night from me when I tell you the story. Like, you are going to think I'm a fucking monster. Yeah. That's basically how he prefaced the start of the story to Eddie, Jake, and Susanna.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my God, like, what did he do?
And we know what he did in Tull. We know what he did to Jake. Like, just because of his track record, too. Like,
wait, which time with Jake? I'm just want to make sure I got...
Dropping him.
Oh, right. I didn't know if it was letting him go to the Oracle and being like, like a willing victim there. There's so many things we got to keep track with him,
Yeah, so it's just one of those things that, like, I don't think any of us kind of came into this expecting a happy story.
No, yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like Roland attracts happy stories anyway.
Yeah.
And we've had enough history of that. So that, along with some of the illusions. So I guess there's part of me that is just kind of rooting. I remember the first time just like rooting for it to like not continue forward the way with, because I obviously as well, even just the way that King's setting this up, let's say he never mentioned her or alluded to her in any of the previous books, and Roland gave none of those prefaces. Still, the way this story is being set up, you've got promise to one of the most powerful people in this region. I mean, certainly the town because he's the mayor, but probably, this is probably a town there. Maybe there's some like outer areas that are like not part of the city, but like he's probably pretty powerful in the region. So then to kind of fall into the whole Romeo and Juliet aspect, like that's probably not going to work out well.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel right to me. So
And
I was hoping that this would be the end of it.
Cut him off. Just you don't see him again.
I didn't believe that, but I hoped.
You hoped. Fool for hoping. This just my note here just goes back to what we were talking about last episode. There was a question brought up by Tad that, man, all this work that she went through to slip the note into Alan's bag between the horseshoes and everything, like,
because I question, is this just kids being kids?
Yeah.
Like we all loved like having like the
super secret handshakes and the coded messages.
Yeah,
and
or like
everything.
when you write the alphabet up one way and down the other, and then like, like so A becomes Z, and then you like have coded notes you can give to your friends and school.
Yeah, exactly.
We all did that kind of
Yeah.
shit. It's like none of it was all dumb. It was kid stuff. So I questioned the last episode, like, are they doing the same thing here? Do they truly need this level of secrecy or not?
And just like my note here is just like, look how she's Cordelia's watching Susan's every move around the house and everything like that. Absolutely. Like, and you know that she has those little people spying for her throughout town and everything.
Yeah.
So you know that she does need to be like super careful.
And I don't think it's spying. I think it's just small town gossip. Like anything that happens.
What they live for. That's all they got.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
If someone's not getting hung or beheaded, then gossip's what we live for.
Now, did you take this as she's watching her in like a watchful way? I kind of almost saw it, like read this as like she was like incredulous. Like, what is she doing? Like, it's like the day of rest. Like, so I almost pictured it more of just like watching her, like kind of like a what the fuck? Like, what is she doing? Why is she working on the day? Like, that's how I read it. But you're reading it more that she's actually like being suspicious, which is fine.
With what we've seen from her previously, yes, that's. I mean, look at how she reacted to Sheemie bringing the flowers and everything. Who's it from? You know, like, raw, like, you know, like instantly suspicious and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I just see that side of her. I haven't seen a "what are you doing, you silly girl" kind of thing.
I think that the reason I think I thought that direction is because it's just at home. Like, if they were in like the town square, yes, like she's watching her to be like, you're not gonna get away with anything. I'm watching every move you make. But just around the house, I guess there was just part of me that's like, I read it as she was just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, this
is probably not normal, right? She probably doesn't work like this on Sundays normally. So like, this is unusual. So I guess it's fine because King doesn't really specify, but that's just how I read it. Was just like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a movie. I feel like there's a movie where someone just watches someone just absolutely like stunned. You know,
more like what the hell has like gone into her? But see, for me, I think that Cordelia is so like conniving that it's what's gone into her. What happened? What's going on? Because she's given that impression already.
Yeah, no, it's, it's true.
Like when she comes back from writing or whatever, one of the times where she's like, "What's happened to you? Who's been talking to you?" You know, she's always like so suspicious. So
yeah, what was it? Is it Padme in episode 2 that says our mentors have a way of seeing the things we don't want them to see?
Exactly.
So this isn't a mentorship, but it's the same idea. A parental figure is also going to see things that you don't want them to see.
Yeah, kids are always flabbergasted when the parents are, guardian in this case is like, well, how'd you know? It's like, I was a kid once.
Yeah, exactly.
I did the same shit. I just knew how to get away with
it. All of our moms convince us they can see through the back of their head, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like, because they knew when you were sticking the tongue out, or in my case, flipping off my, But it's like they knew, but it's like, in my mind, there's two things. It happened sometimes in the car where I'm like, maybe she saw me in the mirror, and I just, as a kid, didn't think of that. But also, it's like, my mom was a kid, too. She probably just knew that, like, we were having some sort of a jawing, and it's like I'm going to have like a negative response. She doesn't need to look to know I'm doing it.
She doesn't know exactly what you're doing, but it's like she does the, Tad, you do that again, I'm going to break your finger, like kind of thing. It's like, how'd she know?
Kids think they're not predictable, but they are.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's see. In the chat, David said nothing's right. She's torn. She's all out of faith. This is how she feels. She's cold. She's ashamed, lying naked on the floor.
That's a song lyric.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Tad wouldn't know that song.
Yeah.
So
music ended for me in 1989 for the most part.
Yeah.
There's a few exceptions.
This is a 90s a chick singing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wondered. It did seem very specific.
Yes.
And then he says, let's see. Roland saves Jake when he's about to get some from the Oracle. Then after he gets his first kiss, Roland puts him into the. That's we can't go into that. But ultimately the larger point still exists though, is that we know we can't trust Roland. He's done some pretty heinous shit to people that he shouldn't have. I mean, Allie is probably our first example, and then Jake later in the book. So, yeah, I don't know. Roland is, and then, like you said, he also gave us this big old preamble where it's like, this is going to stand for every story that I could tell you. And, and he also dreaded telling them, too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's like expecting them to get up and go, "Oh, my God, you monster," and go running away from him.
Yeah.
Ben says in the chat, I always thought part of Cord's problem with Susan is that she's jealous of her and she's paranoid of losing the deal, but even that is caused by her jealousy of Susan because Susan is what she's not, which is true. And we already saw that in the one fight where she like goes to, "Oh, is it over gold? You want gold? I'll give you gold." And she goes and grabs her purse and she pulls the gold out and she's like, "But it's mine. I shouldn't give it to her."
She does the golem.
Yeah, she turns into Golem for a second. So
And then David says, it still blows my mind how oblivious she is to everything except for that her niece might be sleeping with the gunslinger. With that, she's ridiculously perceptive. Yeah, there is other areas where, she's completely up in the night and she's just like, whatever. But yeah, she's very perceptive that, like, something may be up. Like, because we even saw...
Is it at the welcome dinner where she's like, why did he look at you like that?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah,
you know,
it's a look.
That's why I'm... everything that we've had from Cordelia so far indicates that it's... What is she doing? Why is she sleeping? Oh, my God. You know?
Yeah.
It's not a... What's wrong with her? I hope she's okay. You know, kind of.
Yeah.
I know that's not what you're saying, but
yeah,
you know that you know.
So going on here, Cord asked if she was daft and said that it was Sunday. She responded that she's not daft at all without turning to look at Cord. She accomplished the first half of her aim, and she got to bed just after moonrise. And she was physically exhausted, but sleep did not come. She lay in bed, wide-eyed and unhappy. The hours passed and the moon set, and she could not sleep. She wondered in the darkness if there was any chance that her father was murdered to stop his mouth and to silence his mouth. She finally came to the conclusion that Roland had, if there had been no... she finally came to the conclusion that Roland had, which we know that she knows him as Will. If there had been no attraction for her in his eyes or the touch of his hands and lips, she would have agreed to meet him in a flash, if only to put her mind at rest. At this realization, relief overspread her, and she finally was able to fall asleep. So she ultimately knows that she's holding out because if she does see him, it's going to be trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Because
she knows that if they get together, what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My first note is just ugh, Cord.
Yep.
Just, yeah, she's... why can't she have a nice long break like Rhea? I mean, we miss Rhea, but Cord, we could take a whole... What has this been? This has been multiple episodes, episode on episode on episode. That we
Since I came
Rhea.
back.
So it's like, why can't we have that for Cordelia, please?
Yeah, I came back in April, and it's 3 months now of episodes of book clubs of nothing but Cord.
Yeah,
Ugh.
yeah.
Yeah, need a break. I got a note here. I said, I hate getting to bed early, but having something weighing on your mind, but you really don't want to think about it, especially when you were younger, like she is, like a teenager. You got something on your mind. You're like, oh, my boss said he wants to talk to me, or oh man, I hope I get to talk to that girl tomorrow. It's chemistry, and I share that class, and I sit next to her, you know, and everything.
Yeah,
I hated that. I hate that. It doesn't happen as often now that I'm an adult.
Yeah,
which is funny because I have like actual problems, not teenage problems.
Yeah, but
it's just like I've learned to cope with it. I didn't know how to back then, so it's just
me too. It's called alcohol.
Tad, I don't know if that's a good coping mechanism.
But when it comes to like silencing dumb thoughts that you're overthinking shit, it's a perfect medicine, sir.
What's in that bottle, Tad?
And then Max says Pat Delgado must have been some man to keep her the worst of her at bay when he was alive. And I just don't think that Cordelia would have dared any of this to Pat. You know what I mean? Because like with Pat there, the whole power dynamic changes, right? Because he took her in. So it's like she's kind of the charity case, but it's like once he's gone,
then
now
it reverses, and
even though
Susan becomes the I took you into my home. It's like, well, no, this is my dad's house, you bitch.
Exactly. So I don't even know if it speaks as much to Pat as much as it does that like almost the snakiness of Cordelia, where like she's gonna act this way to Susan that she probably never would have dared to act to her brother. That's my assumption. But yeah. And then going on here, my next note, I assume that the murder thought is the one of those that is so obvious that she had to have seen it for herself, but she was blind, and that's why she can't shake the thought. I feel like we all have those oh fucking duh revelations where something was so obvious but we missed it. But obviously this for her is a huge one too.
Yeah.
It's not just like oh my god, this plot point that was so clear in this movie I've been watching for 15 years. Like I suddenly just realized it. Like, you know, you feel dumb, but it's like this is like a life altering you know, realization for her, but it does seem like it probably should have been pretty obvious, but it's easy to be blind to.
Well, also at the same time, I love this note because it is absolutely should be an oh fucking duh, but only when someone points out that something's wrong in Hambry.
Yeah,
like if nothing's wrong in Hambry, well, yeah, absolutely, a rancher, you know, a horseman association guy, his horse got spooked, he fell off and he died. Like,
yeah,
those kind of accidents happen to cowboys and ranchers and stuff like that. It happens. I'm not
Yeah.
a rancher. I've worked on a ranch one day in my entire life. My uncle owned a ranch up in Idaho for a while. I spent one day up there, and even that one day taught me, like, okay, accidents happen. She was young. An adult came and told her something.
Yeah.
How many times when you were, well, maybe not you, is not a good example because you're evil. But how many times does a normal kid, have an adult tell them something and they go, this motherfucker's lying to me. I don't trust him. It doesn't happen like that when it's a serious conversation, like, hey,
Yeah.
this is what happened to your dad. Hey, your mom died in a car accident. Kind of
Yeah.
thing. You don't question it. It's an
But
adult.
also
telling
you're
you.
close to these people too in a smaller town.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
she
not
know-
like it was some nameless sheriff that came and told her.
Yeah.
She knows the man.
Yeah, yeah. Max also says Cord is far worse than Rhea, by the way. Rhea is like cartoonishly evil, but Cord is just such a horrible person. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the ultimate debate. I mean, we had our most hated poll back in 2019, and Rhea won, but Cordelia was number 2. So I've still
Yeah.
said that, I think this is one you could almost retake that final poll, especially after maybe this whole book club plays out. I think you may be able to, because I think there is an argument to be made for Cordelia being worse. Probably because, Max calls her cartoonishly evil. I wouldn't even say that. I would just say she's a witch. She's
Yeah.
doing what she's supposed to do. She's a fucking witch. Cordelia is not. She's a family member. She should be like the kind and compassionate.
That's your niece.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate betrayal for any kid.
We both have nieces.
Yeah.
And if we were to obtain guardianship through a horrible tragedy, this is not how we would react to it.
No. No. I mean, the good thing for me is my niece is almost an adult here pretty soon.
She's getting close.
Next year or two.
Very, very
Yeah,
close.
she's pretty close to 18 now. So, I won't end up.
Oh,
Dude,
dodged a bullet.
yeah, kids are that's a lot, man. That's a lot. There's a reason, I
Single
avoid,
bachelor,
I
yep.
avoid such things.
Your
Also,
kids are those movies back there.
yes, and some demons I've spawned.
Wait, what?
It's right over there behind that shelf.
No.
Also, my theme for this section seems to be, and this kind of goes in the last episode too, seems to be being reminded these are children. But I will say her decision on not meeting Roland is actually a pretty adult decision, because all through last episode it felt like there was things that kept coming up to remind us Roland and Susan are both fucking children.
Yeah.
And it's like they're both dealing with very adult situations.
Oh, yeah.
But they're both still kids, and we really got to make sure we keep that in our heads that this is like a 14-year-old and maybe a 15 or 16-year-old. Like we know she's a little bit older than him, but like
Yeah.
I don't know if we've been given the exact age on her. But either way, it's like they're still fucking kids, even though they're both facing like kind of life or death situations. So that kind of goes into last episode, but it's a good reminder here as well that despite having a very adult decision being made here, she is still a kid. All right, so let's move on over to subchapter 7.
All right. Subchapter 7, Roland and his friends are having fives in the Traveler's Rest. I'm assuming that's lunch because it says afternoon. Cold beef sandwiches and gallons of white iced tea. Not as good as Deputy Dave's wife's, but still not bad. Sheemie comes in from watering his flowers and greets the boys by calling them the little Coffin Hunters. He had a little packet with them. Cuthbert says they don't enjoy being called that, and to play it soft on all of that. Sheemie says aye, and then he pauses as a look of puzzlement comes over on his face, and is as if he's unable to remember why he came to talk to them in the first place. Then his eyes cleared, and he holds out the packet to Roland. Roland asks what it is, and Sheemie says they are seeds. Roland asks if they are from Sheemie, and he says they are not. Roland takes the envelope with nothing written on the back or front. Roland asks whose it's from, and Sheemie says he can't remember, but he remembers what he's supposed to say to him, though. Roland tells him to go ahead and say it. And then direct quote here for the book. Speaking as one who recites a painful memorized line, both proud and nervous, he said, "These are the seeds you scattered on the drop." Roland's eyes blazed so fiercely that Sheemie stumbled back a step, gave his sombrero a quick tug, turned and hurried back to the safety of his flowers. He liked Will Dearborn and Will's friends, especially Mr. Arthur Heath, who sometimes said things that made Sheemie laugh fit to split. But in that moment, he saw something in Will's size eyes that frightened him badly. In that instance, he understood that Will was as much a killer as the one in the cloak, or the one who wanted Sheemie to lick his boots clean, or old white-haired Jonas with his trembly voice. As bad as them, or even worse. And that's the end of the subchapter. That's the whole subchapter. Is this Sheemie gives him this note and just sees this look in Roland's eyes of apparently pure murder lust is what Sheemie takes it as.
Yeah, I think it's an intensity though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's like truly like a murderous intent there.
I think Sheemie's just misunderstanding it.
Because the like Roland's eyes blazing is a reoccurring motif throughout these stories. The one that I always remember is the Blaine during the
Command me not.
Yeah, exactly. That whole thing. It talks about Roland's eyes blazing. So it's like that is a reoccurring thing. But of course, this would be him doing it as a child. But I do think that it comes down to more of like an intensity or whatever. But I think it does. What is it? The eyes are the windows into the soul type thing. Yep. And Sheemie just, and I almost think like he sees what he's seeing is we've seen it a couple different times in this book where someone it's basically spelled it out of saying like someone looked at Roland and he gave a look that gave them almost an image of what he would become.
Yeah.
Like, they're seeing the future Roland that we know very well.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of what Sheemie is seeing here. Not that Roland is any kind of threat to him, but it's more of like an intensity of like, for a flash, he's seeing adult Roland that we've obviously seen.
And it terrifies him.
Yes. And it should.
And it sends him running, kind of thing.
As it should.
As we were just talking about, that's what Roland was basically expecting from his companions when he told him this story. So it's like, Exhibit A, Your Honor, kind of thing. I like that Cuthbert not wanting to be called the Little Coffin Hunters is a sign how he isn't just 100% an attention-seeking loudmouth, because we absolutely could see him being like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Little Coffin Hunter here, about to take over.
But,
here's
my counterpoint, though, is my big question is, do you think that they actually don't want to be called that they don't want to be called that? Do you think that's for humility reasons of like what you're saying, or has it just become like a thing of like we don't want to spur them into further, because like that could really spark them to come back on the kids.
Absolutely.
So it might be more of like, because I wonder if in their heart of hearts, especially Cuthbert, might actually kind of enjoy that, because it's like, man, I'm a kid, but I fucking got the better of some hard ass motherfuckers.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's kind of like one of those things.
Don't
like,
rock the boat.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, you'll see a thing where like a kid will say something where you said something maybe impolite about like a friend or a family member, and then your kid repeats it in the wrong setting.
They are little parrots. That's absolutely
and
true.
It's just like the problems it can cause you. And I that's how I interpreted it probably more, because I think that like, and I'm not saying that like Cuthbert's like this, like or like self, whatever, big-headed prick.
Yeah.
I don't think he is, but I do think that there would be a joy in a child that was able to accomplish something to give like that kind of a nickname. Like it's whereas like fast forward, say, they all live to be older, like adult, or not old, but they grow up to be adults, let's say. I don't know that Cuthbert would enjoy it as much then, but I think him now, it's kind of like that first time that like your dad says, "Oh man, I'm so proud you acted like an adult there." Like, there's just
way
kind
to
of
go, Ace, kind of thing, like
something.
calling you a little nickname while doing it, kind of thing.
So I guess that's how I would view almost in my mind. Whereas Roland wouldn't give a fuck, except for the fact of like, don't fucking rock the boat, man. Like those guys are dangerous. We're all safe right now. Everyone's holding their spot. Please don't do anything to like upset that shit.
Yeah, don't rock the boat. I absolutely see where you're coming from, and I think that both of them points to the point I'm trying to make about Cuthbert. It doesn't matter which one it is. I don't think whether it's A or B, it doesn't matter. I think that just proves that Cuthbert isn't just a 100% attention-seeking loudmouth.
Yeah.
I wanted to put attention-seeking whore, by the way. I love that phrase.
But
I think that Cuthbert has shown, especially after the showdown, where he comes down off of his high of saving Sheemie, and he doesn't say a goddamn word during the meetings and everything.
Yeah.
I think that shows you exactly who Cuthbert is. And I think what I think here, after reading your note and hearing you explain it more, I don't think it's either. I honestly think that Cuthbert is a little bit offended here. I don't think he wants to be associated with those pieces of shit.
Could be that,
I
too.
think that Cuthbert has a moral compass inside of him as a gunslinger.
Because,
Yeah,
because ultimately you are tying them to those guys.
To those pieces of shit that was going to murder Sheemie for spilling a drink on his boot.
Yeah.
I think that Cuthbert's a step above that.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that he's a little bit offended here. But he's such a nice guy, he's not going to put Sheemie down for it. Because it's Sheemie.
Yeah.
He doesn't deserve that. Because if he did put him down, wouldn't he be a little coffin hunter a little bit?
Yeah.
But he just asked him, hey,
but
go easy on that, bro.
From what we know of the three, Cuthbert would be the only one that would actually enjoy it, though, right? Like, enjoy the pride of, like, being called that. Because I just feel like Roland wouldn't care, and I feel like
at this point, with what Roland's gone through with like his mother and everything like that, he wouldn't give a shit.
But even just normal Roland, I feel like Roland's so like, I don't know. I mean, we know he'll eventually become kind of Terminator-y, but I just feel like Roland is so removed from like the basic humanities, and even as a kid, I think he has that where he's just kind of removed. And I mean, obviously, we're seeing some true humanity with his love with Susan, but I just think that like he wouldn't give a fuck about like a title like it's meaningless to him.
Yeah.
And Alan, I think, is almost too meek to where he would be like ashamed of like
no, please don't call me that.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I get. So I'm just saying, like, of the three, the only one that might enjoy it, and maybe that's why King is telling us that that he's the one that spoke up.
Yeah, not Alan spoke up, not Roland spoke up. Cuthbert did. That's why I wanted to call attention to it. Is because it's like I see exactly what you see. Why would Cuthbert be the one? Because he would be the one that would like a title, he comes back from a quest where he saves this town from a whole bandit clan of rapists and murderers, and he becomes the Bandit Slayer, and that's his nickname. And he's like, "Hey boys, who wants to buy the Bandit Slayer's first drink back in Gilead?" Kind of thing.
Of course, I always think it would be done in humor, though, right?
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
He would never be serious about it.
No, he wouldn't. It would all be in good fun, and that's Cuthbert for you.
Yeah, which. God love him.
I know, right?
he's so great. I love him so much.
But you can't stand Eddie. I love it.
It's not that I couldn't stand Eddie. It was just that I didn't trust Eddie. Because as I came to learn later through, what was told later on in my timeline that makes total sense is what Gus Fring says to Walter White. You can never trust a drug addict. So, or a junkie. He interchanges those words.
Yes.
But that's the distrust I always had of Eddie is just like, one, you put a knife to my boy's throat because you wanted to get through and get your smack. Two, you are a freaking addict at heart, and I just don't know if I could ever trust you.
Look, he just wanted chicken, man.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they call it nowadays.
David says the witch is different because she's evil, but she owns it, and she knows who she is. She doesn't pretend not to be evil, and I think that's really the difference, and that's why I'm like, I almost excused Rhea, not entirely because a witch is still a witch, but it's like at least she's not pretending to be something else, whereas like Cordelia is like pretending to be this upstanding member of the town and stuff, and it's like, you're a fucking evil woman.
It's
like,
it's what makes some serial killers so much more fascinating than others. Like, oh, this guy just killed prostitutes. Like, okay, he has a problem with that kind of woman, kind of thing. But when you get to someone like Bundy, who pretended to be a father, who pretended to be a good husband and everything like that.
Yeah.
And he looked like the guy next door.
Getting a law degree and stuff.
Getting a law degree. He and then you find out that he murdered over 20 people. He claims later on over 100. You're like, the two-sidedness there is exactly what we're talking about with Cordelia. And what, to David's point here, is that you're not supposed to be that. Like, you're not just some weird-looking dude who decided to kill people because, they set him off or something like that. Why are you doing it? Why are you doing this? And that's the question for Cordelia is, why? And that's what was brought up in the chat is that, was it Max that said it? Where it's like, even with everything, like worrying about the money and everything, I still think that it's part jealousy of what Susan has and she doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's even been pointed out to an extent of like, there is a jealousy there because she's kind of the old, spinstress,
well,
right?
She calls her Miss So High and Mighty. Oh, young, so young and pert, and all these like horrible nicknames too.
I think at the end of this book club, the entire thing, we need to do another poll. Not
just those two head to head.
Not for most hated. We're not going to undo the poll previous.
No.
But at the end of this book, we should just have a poll, put it up for like a month even, and just be like Cordelia or Rhea, who's worse?
Let's have it. Honestly, we could do that for a roundtable discussion and just seriously have a discussion about it, and then put the poll.
Put the poll up. Yeah.
Do kind of a Rhea Cordelia summit like we've had before with Flag.
I mean, a whole episode talking about Rhea and Cordelia. Doesn't that sound fun?
Disgusting.
I know I'm not supposed to use them, but ugh, God, look.
So now over to subchapter 8. Roland slipped the seed pack into his shirt and would not open it until they were back at the Bar K. The thinning wine in the distance making their horse twitch their ears nervously. Cuthbert impatiently said, well, and Roland took the envelope from his shirt pocket and tore it open. He did as he did, he reflected that Susan knew just what to say. The others bent in, Alan from the left, Cuthbert from the right, as he unfolded the single scrap of paper. On it was a neatly written message, not much longer than the last one, but the contents are radically different. And it said, and this is directly from the book, there is an orange grove a mile off the road on the town side of Citgo. Meet me there at moonrise. Come alone. S. And then below that, printed was an emphatic little, in emphatic little letters, burn this. And then that's the end of the quote. And then Alan said he'd keep a lookout, and Roland agreed, but said from a distance, and then burned the note. So again, end of the subchapter. We're hitting some shorter subchapters.
Yeah, these are some quick ones.
Yeah, there's a few short ones in this week's. So pretty good patience for Roland here. This is one of those spots I need to remind myself again that he's 14, because patience can be hard for the best of us. But how much more so for a kid?
Oh, I'm terrible at this kind of thing. Like, someone gives me something, don't open this until you get home. I get my car and I'm like, what do we got here? Oh, okay. I'll wait till I'm home. I'm terrible.
Yeah.
I'm well, it's the reason why I give gifts early.
Yeah.
I've given you birthday gifts a month or two before your birthday.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm terrible at it.
Yeah. No, and I think that a lot of us have times where it's like that. But yeah. So that's some good discipline, especially because we kind of know what his desires are.
Oh, especially with her,
Once he knows it's from her, like, the blazing look in his eyes, like, I'm surprised he didn't immediately open it there, as dumb as that would have been. Like...
Well, especially with what he suspects probably it is.
Yeah.
Because he already got the no.
Yeah.
And now he's got another note. So what's that? It can't be another no, right?
Wouldn't that be funny if it was?
He just opens up the note. Fuck you. Eat shit or something like that from her.
Never look in my direction again.
Yeah. It's a note from Jonas, your mother's a whore or something. It's like, oh, damn. I looked it up, by the way, because I was just curious. According to the Stephen King, the Dark Tower Wikipedia wiki, Susan Delgado is 16.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I thought that was in my head, which puts her 2 years older than Roland.
Yep.
I just wasn't confident in my memory enough to say it without caging it a bit. So that's good to reference there, because I do think it does kind of tell us how old she was when her dad died, and then it tells us how long ago that was. I think with that you get the math.
Because it was a few years before, like 7 years before, wasn't it?
It was I think something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then my next note, hell, even Cuthbert is beside himself with excitement, and it's not even the girl that he loves. So, again, props to Roland for having the patience to wait till they're back. You could have opened it on the road,
Yeah.
You don't have to wait till you're back at the Barquet.
He wanted to make sure.
No, I know, but
Better safe than sorry.
I'm just saying, when you rationalize it with yourself, there's plenty of other times you could have been like, all right, we're out of the side of people. Let me just open it right now. So good on him, man. He's got some what is it? What
restraint?
Who are the ones that take the vows of silence, and is that
Shaolin monks?
Yeah, like monk. He's got some monk level discipline here to again at 14 especially, to hold off with
a note from a pretty girl that he thinks is from a pretty girl.
Yeah.
He doesn't know it until he opens it, because there's nothing written on the envelope and everything.
Yeah.
But I can tell you right now, man, junior high, walk into class, I get a note handed to me, and I think it's from a pretty girl, man.
Yeah. You can't open this till you get home today after school.
I get into my next class, and I'm just like, let me just take a look-see.
What do you got?
I like that Alan agreed to keep a lookout. Not only a good little soldier, but also a good bro. He's like, don't worry, I got you, bro.
Alan wingman.
Yeah, the wingman Alan.
Max says she's like Cinderella's jealous stepsisters. Talking about Cordelia.
Yeah.
And then David does mention Goro. Indeed,
that's what that soundbite is from.
The soundbite.
One of our longer running ones.
Yeah,
we've said that for decades.
Yeah, that's one I've been quoting since I was a wee child when that movie came out.
Yeah, and you got me doing it.
Yes, indeed. Also, my last note. Also, we see why Roland is happy, but I'm not sure this is good.
Yeah.
Again, the hopeful part of me that was like, cool, this is done. Yep. We can just avoid all this unpleasantry that might be coming here. But now the door is open again. So
yeah,
that's we'll see.
Yep. So we're on to subchapter 9 here, like Tad said, just some fast subchapters. Roland and his boys get to the grove early before the moon has risen, so we're just jumping right to this meeting. There's nothing in between. He can hear squeaks and other skeletal sounds from the oil patch, and the smell of the oranges makes Roland homesick. Combining the sound of technology and the smell of oranges, He thinks even for the first time how he might never see home again. He heard Susan approach, but not until she was almost on top of him. If she had been an enemy, he would have had time to draw and fire, but it would have been close. He admired her for it, and then he saw her face in the moonlight. Her hands were linked before her and her waist, before her at her waist, that made her look sweetly and unconsciously childlike. Roland took a step towards her, and her hands flew up in front of her. Roland took this for alarm and stopped, but he had misread the gesture. And Susan could have stopped then, but chose not to. She stepped toward him and said, "Will Durborn, we are met both fair and ill," in a trembling voice, and then they were kissing, burning against each other as the peddler moon rose in the famine of its last quarter. So, we went from never talking again to this right off the bat. And that's my third no, but, I'll just get to it now. That didn't take long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roland having the thought that he might not see home unnerves me, even though I know what happens. But, we know he's alive. He's telling the story to Eddie, Jake, and Susanna on the interstate in Kansas. I know he's alive, but still, it's like, when Roland gets nervous, I get nervous.
But my note was, we know that he lives, but do we know he ever gets home?
Oh, dude, that's a good point.
Who knows if that was, when he left was the last time he ever saw home, potentially.
Yeah, because we know that Gilead falls, but when?
Yeah.
Everything.
So there's enough unknowns there where it's it's enough unknowns to make you nervous. I will also point out, I didn't have this as a note, but when it says that she got almost on top of him before he realized she was there, and he would have had time to draw and fire, but it would have been close. We know he doesn't have his gun on him.
Yeah.
But let's remember how quick
Roland is.
These gunslingers are.
Yeah.
So if it would have been close, that says how close she was, right?
Yeah.
Let's not just overlook that of what would an average person in our world look like drawing. No.
It's not 6 to 10 feet away.
Yeah,
no, we're not talking about that, he sees her out of the corner of his eye and everything like that. No, we're talking a foot or two away. That's it.
Because ultimately it only takes a fraction of a second for him to draw the way we've seen. And I get he's younger, so maybe we'll say it's half a second instead of a quarter of a second. But still, that he drawing and firing is pretty quick and easy, and that's something he's been trained from a very young age to. So the fact that it would have been close does really show how close she got. So she's a crafty one, apparently.
She's very sneaky, sir. And then right here, we got a line at the end of this. The peddler moon rose in the famine of its last quarter. So King is doing another subtle reminding us that time is ticking away. The moon, big and full when they went to go see the Thinny, is now in its last quarter. So, okay, we're marching right along here in time. And we know that there's a deadline coming up.
Yeah.
So when this deal's going down with her and the mayor. So, just keep that ticking clock in mind.
Because I think we had a ticking clock in book 2 because of the poisoning, but it wasn't a hard you've got 27 hours until Roland's dead. Yeah, it's more of just we've got to fucking hurry, right?
Yeah.
And but this though, it's it feels like there's a defined time.
This is a bomb with a timer counting down.
Yeah,
not 24 where it's just counting the time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's was book 2. It's just oh man, it's been 2 days since he got poisoned, kind of thing. Shit. Well, how long does the poison take? I don't know.
Yeah.
Shit, we gotta move.
Yeah.
But this one, it's 7, 6, 5, kind of thing.
I wish we saw some lobstrosities here.
No.
At the docks.
No.
That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
No.
They were happy, fun creatures.
No, they were not. And that's the end of subchapter 9, by the way.
Yeah, all right. Let's go on over to 10. 10's a little bit longer than the last couple.
Unfortunately.
Because guess who's back?
Back again.
It is who we've been waiting for months.
No, who you've been waiting for.
Rhea.
Yeah.
So in the lonely hut on Cöos Hill, Rhea sat at her table, bent over the glass ball that the Coffin Hunters had brought her a month and a half ago. Her face was lit by its pink glow, and no one could have mistaken her face for a girl any longer. Which that was Susan, right? That saw her in the light of the glass, and she could have mistaken her for a young woman or a young girl even, because the ball was doing something. But it sounds like that's no longer the case. She had a great vitality, and it had carried her for many years. The oldest residents of Hanbury was the only ones who had any clue to how old Rhea was, and it was only a vague idea at that. But the ball was sapping it, sucking it like a vampire. The hut's larger room behind her was even dirtier and more cluttered than usual. She no longer had time for even the pretense of cleaning. The ball took all of her time. When she wasn't looking at it, she was thinking about looking into it. Such things to see, it says. So, so we got a pretty distinct time marker here.
Yeah.
She got the ball before her meeting with Susan, and obviously that's when Roland and the boys arrived around this pretty much about the same night, or the same night, because we got the sense that they actually were riding into town. It wasn't just a lie of like.
Yeah, they rode into town camping, and then Roland went for a ride.
Yeah. So, and as she ran into him after her inspection, so we've been here for a month and a half. The group has been in this town for a month and a half. It's not impossible to do the math with as much as King has given us timestamps throughout this story, but I will say there's been enough non-linear things that it could have gotten somewhat confusing.
Yep.
Where it's like, 2 months after, or 2 weeks after the dinner, and then like later on, it's like, well, then a week after the dinner, and it's like it's bounced around to where it's like, I think you could probably track it if you like got a notebook out and like kept track. But now this has been our most clear. Like it's been a month and a half. Like that's a pretty easy.
Just like a hard. There's how much time it's been.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Which is funny because we started this whole series in a flashback inside of a flashback, and we kept flashing back. We were like 2 or 3 levels deep before we finally got to like whatever. And so it's just kind of funny that King has continually played with like the aspect of time. Like it doesn't roll out like The Stand, where The Stand is very linear. Like he'll say, well, this section is July this through August this, and then like. Maybe within that there's a little bit of moving with characters, but it's like ultimately
there's the thing the King does is where someone's walking along the road and they're remembering how they ended up getting there.
Yeah.
But it is taking place, like you said, in between July 11th and August 14th. Like it is taking place in that time frame.
Yeah, and with this series, though, he's been a lot more plastic with time. He's allowed time to be a little bit more malleable in the realm of his story, which can make it confusing for us that maybe are a little bit more nerdy and want to figure out the exact timing of things.
Yeah.
My next note, that is interesting. I guess I assume she moved into the area at some point, maybe like Sylvia Pittston, who moves around until finding a good spot. But this would imply that she was born in this town. Otherwise, the oldest resident would not have any clue how old she was beyond a guess.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think I've ever locked onto this before, but, like, that does give us an indication that she's probably born in this town. And the oldest people, I mean, it would be a vague idea because, like, time... it gets slippery and it starts to whatever, but it's like the fact that they would know that.
Well, we
would
also
mean
know
that
time is kind of funky in Roland's world, even back then.
It's true, but I think that like the fact that they might even have a vague idea of her age would tell me that like they may have gone to school with her or something.
Oh no, absolutely,
so it's like,
yeah.
It's just interesting because I think I've always just assumed that she was kind of like Sylvia Pittston, where it's like, once you find a really good spot, you may fucking land there and you're there for good. Which is, she's obviously well ingrained in this town, but it's like I guess I just pictured witches. Whatever. So I don't know. I've never caught on to this. So this is why I love doing these book clubs.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Small things like this jump out where it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So she's born in Hambury. Interesting.
Oh yeah, she's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get what you're saying with it, but how much creepier is it that she's the old woman that's always been there, that people just accept her?
Yeah.
It's Rhea of the Cöos. It's the witch.
And,
so it's just part of the town.
And they kind of like bow to her.
Yes,
right?
they do.
Like the proving honest. Like I imagine it's not
That's
just
a major transaction. Like we're talking about the mayor.
Yeah.
Who is basically the king of this area.
Yeah.
Going into this contract, but he can't do it unless she has the approval of Rhea.
Yeah, and don't you imagine that that's not just the mayor that does that? I imagine most girls go up to her before
a wedding, or
even if it's like like a rancher that's marrying his daughter to someone else and there's like a dowry. It's just whatever old-timey stuff, but it's like I would imagine that Rhea is involved in a lot of that stuff. So
yeah, this would not be the first proving honest that Rhea has done.
no, because I mean even just the familiarity of it from like Cordelia, right? When she got back, it's like, did she give you something? And like
it's like Cordelia had done it herself, even though Cordelia's never been married. So I wonder if it's like
I don't think she'd done it because she was very like curious, like like how was it? Did she give you like? It felt like it's almost like she kind of knows the general gist, but not the specifics. She was never in that room, but it's kind of one of those things though that people talk and you kind of get a sense of, and because I always kind of got that almost schoolgirly thing from Cordelia where it's like, like what happened, how what like just
what did she say?
Yeah,
What'd she do?
it's like the first kid that gets sent to the principal's office. When he comes back, it's like everyone's like, well, what happened? Like, that's the vibe I got. So
Max says, I'm just picturing Rhea at school when some poor kid refused to let her copy their homework.
Serious?
She's not Henry Bowers.
Serious
She's
though,
worse.
Like it does. It makes you kind of breaks your mind a little bit though, where it's like she was once like, a 15-year-old girl in school. She was once, I don't know. It's strange because like you always just picture a witch as a witch, and she's always been a witch. She was just born like
Oh my God.
100 years old.
Ermot's a boy and Misty's a girl. What if that's her parents? And she just turned him into a snake and a mutated cat.
A newt?
He turned me into a newt.
I got better.
Oh
man, good stuff,
dude. Dude, that's headcanon for me. That's fan canon. I'm gonna call it that from now on. Fan canon. That's my fan canon. Is that Rhea became powerful as a kid and then just turned her parents into a snake, and that's why she gets so distraught over it. I don't
know what you're talking
about. Like not distraught. Sorry, like loving on them and everything like that. It's her parents.
Well, we do have some Ermot come up here in a second. So this is interesting because when she got it at the beginning of the story, I thought it was dangerous to put such a powerful thing in the hands of a witch. But it seems that but this seems to give the idea that it's actually dangerous for her as well. Because it seems like it's having ill effects on her. I guess that's not what I pictured at the beginning when like we had a flashback with her talking to the Coffin Hunters and stuff. There was an idea that like it was being put there for safekeeping. And my thought, and I remember even saying it in the episode where it was like, why the fuck would you give a witch a tool like
something
this?
super powerful?
But it actually, this is giving me the vibe that this might actually be dangerous for Rhea. It isn't just like a dangerous for everyone around because you just gave a witch a fucking powerful item, but it's actually like draining her a bit. Like it says, like it's like a vampire.
It makes you wonder what would happen if you gave it to a non-witch, like just a normal person, and they became obsessed with it.
Yeah,
would they already be dead? Is
Yeah.
Rhea only alive because she is a witch and she has special powers, kind of thing?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because I'd never pictured that it would be dangerous to her, but it does seem like it might be and also vampires. It's something we haven't seen in this story yet. This world does seem like one that vampires would exist. I mean, we've seen.
Go on. I'm gonna look something up.
We've seen demons. We've seen succubuses. We've seen. Speaking rings. Like, I just imagine this is a place that like Roland would just like in passing be like, oh yeah, I ran into some vampires once, and he'd be like, wait, what? It just feels right for this world.
Okay. Never mind.
Ermot. Speaking of the lovely Ermot.
Little fucking snake.
Ermot wrapped around one of her scrawny legs and hissed with agitation. She barely noticed him. Instead, she leaned in closer to the ball's pink poison glow, and again, their poison. That's
literally my note.
The nomenclature. It's just weird because we weren't given that vibe in the first couple chapters.
Well,
when
if something
it was
makes you
given to
look
her.
younger and beautiful and stuff like that, it doesn't make you think poison.
No, it makes you think almost it may even be revitalizing you.
Yeah.
But it's like now suddenly this section we're in at this very moment is flipping everything on its head that we kind of assumed from those early stages. So enchanted by what she saw, it was the girl who had come to her to be proven honest, and the young man who had been the first person she had seen through the ball, the one that she had mistaken for a gunslinger until she realized his youth. The foolish girl who had come to Rhea singing and had left in a more proper silence had been proven honest and may still be by the time may still be by the timid greed that was the hallmark of virgins, that she's basically seeing Roland and Susan going at it, and what she's seeing from her is things that you would see with a virgin, but she would not stay honest if they kept going the way they were going. Wouldn't Hart be in for a surprise when he took his alleged pure gilly girl to bed? There were ways to fool men. Men practically begged to be fooled on this front. A thimble of pig's blood would serve nicely, but the girl wouldn't know that. This was too good, and she could watch Miss Haughty brought low from this wonderful glass. It was too good, too wonderful. She leaned closer, her eyes filled with pink fire. Ermot, sensing that he was not going to get her attention, slithered away in search of bugs. Musty pranced away from him, spitting feline curses.
See, the cat and the snake are fighting. It's just like a married couple. I'm telling you, it's my fan canon right now.
Oh, man. And then my note, poor Ermot.
No. Little snake.
Snakes are awesome. I've had a lot of good snake pets in the course of my life. Good callback to remind us of the stuff from early in the story, because it has been quite a spell since then. Reminds us that Rhea saw Roland when the Coffin Hunters gave her the ball. It was the first thing she saw. It reminds us that they did give her the ball. There's a number of cool reminders that King is like, as we are now, like I said at the beginning of the episode, at the end of this episode, we're going to be at 45% of the book completed. And yes, Blaine was a chunk of the first part.
Yeah.
But still, we're a good ways into this story.
Yeah.
So it's easy to forget some of that stuff. And so my last note for this section, while Rhea may be reveling in what is going on here, it is extremely bad for our boys and for Susan.
Yeah, we're all worried about someone seeing them, and here we got someone watching them.
Yeah, and someone that is malicious too.
Who doesn't like her.
Yeah, doesn't like her. Would it not be just like her to witness something and then send a note to Hart saying she's not honest anymore? That I remember the first time reading, that was my fear. It's like, that's what's going to fucking happen, man.
Oh, shit.
At some point, even if it's not right now, they're going to have sex, and then fucking Rhea is going to do the witchy thing and send a goddamn note to someone saying that, hey, game's over. She's not a virgin anymore. Isn't that what a witch would do?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was just like, oh my God, like I was turning into C-3PO. I'm like, we're doomed.
We're doomed.
That was my thought at this point.
And so going over to subchapter 11, Roland, sensing the moment rushing at them, stepped away from her somehow. Even by the light of the moon, he could see how flushed she was. He had manly aches. I'm just going to describe it as that. It went into more detail in the book, and I'm not talking about that. Susan half turned away from him, and Roland saw her sombrero had gone askew, and he reached out with a trembling hand to straighten it. She catches his hand in hers and bends to pick up her discarded riding gloves. She had needed to touch him skin to skin, and when she straightened up, the blood rushed from her head. And if Roland hadn't had his hands on her shoulders, she might have fallen. She turns to him with rueful eyes and asks, what are they going to do? He says the best that they can that their fathers had taught them. She said, this is mad. Roland thinks he had never felt anything so sane in his life, even with his manly pains, but said nothing. She asked if he knew how dangerous it was. He reached for her, and she stepped back, saying it was best he not right now. I just paused real fast. My only note, wise choice. Wise choice.
Indeed. And then my note, the battle of every parent of a teenager. They are hormonal and lack good decision-making. As teens, our parents frustrated us, but now we can look back and realize why.
Oh, God, yes.
It's like, that's kind of what we're seeing here.
I never thought that I would turn into be like my parents with that, but I'm on the cusp of having a teenager, and I get it. Yeah. I get it a lot more now. Trust me, I do.
Yeah, indeed.
So going on, she asks if he set his friends to watch, and he says that yes, he did, but they can't see them. She says that is wise. Then she asks who he really is. He says that they are almost who they say they are. They weren't sent there because of drink and helling, but they weren't sent to uncover some conspiracy either. They were boys who needed to be put out of the way of danger. She asks if Will Dearborn is his real name. He says one name is as good as another. Then he says Richard saw her at the mayor's house today. She explained she was getting fitted for her Reaping Girl outfits. The mayor had chosen her as this year's Reaping Girl, and she thinks it is foolishness. A boy was chosen as the Reap Lad, as Thorin was 40 years too old. Roland says she will make the most beautiful Reap Girl ever. There are 5 costumes for the Reap Girl. In Gilead, there are 9. Just a little bit of world building there. 6 if you count the little piece she has to wear for Thorin after the feast when she becomes his Gilly. She would have happily worn all of them for Will instead, she thinks. And
yeah,
I said,
I do love that element of like it would be more grand in Gilead, right? Like it's the big city, so it's like whatever festival type things. Like
we have a 4-course meal. Well, in New York City, they have a 12-course meal.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more grand,
yeah,
right? Because they can afford that opulence. So I love that. It's a cool world-building piece of I don't know. And it makes total sense. Like, it feels right.
Yeah, I honestly was going through this, doing my notes, and I got to that part, and I'm like, there's no point for me to cover this. And then I was like, oh, that's really cool world-building. So that's why I went back and I actually put it in. I'm like, good on King just to, world build a little bit there and everything.
Yeah.
And then, oh boy, she is asking some real questions now. Like, not just like, are you here doing what you're supposed to be doing? Like, what are you really here for, kind of thing?
Yeah.
No, she's starting to catch on. This girl is smart.
Yeah.
She really is. Like, she's sharp.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And he is giving up more information than he should. Their cover story is decent, but it doesn't take more than one thread to come loose, and the whole thing is going to come apart. I remember wondering between DePape finding out what he did on the road, as well as now this, because ultimately Roland is being too truthful here. You know, he shouldn't admit that like that isn't his name, right? He's not given the name, but he's admitting that that's not like one name's as good as another.
Yeah.
That's just basically a way of saying like, yeah, it's not my name, but it'll work.
Yeah, it's not my name, but don't worry about it.
Yeah, so I was worried that between DePape finding this and then now him getting loose with the truth with Susan a little bit, not keeping the story tight, I remember the first time through getting very worried that their identities are about to blow up here in this next little bit. Just that, which you wouldn't expect that. You'd expect it to probably happen closer to the end. But I was just like, wouldn't it be just like King to throw a curveball and like, you know, what feels like probably the midway point in a hardcover book or in a hard physical book, we'd be looking at the page count and going, well, we're only about halfway through. Their secret's safe, but King is the kind of writer, though, that he'll bamboozle you at times. So I remember getting kind of nervous about that because I'm like, DePape's learned some shit. Now Susan's asking questions and Roland's being too truthful. Like, this isn't good. This is
this is not safe.
Friendly and unfriendly both are learning more than they should. And I just remember being like, uh-oh.
Yeah. My last note here is I just put I realized this time that this is kind of like prom queen and prom king. And it's gross to think about a man 40 years too old to be king betting with the prom queen.
Yeah.
It's never really clicked like the actual age gap here between Thor and Susan for me.
Yeah, because you'd imagine that the right age is close to Susan's age. So 40 years too old, that puts him close to 60.
Yeah, that's really fucking gross, man. like that for me, like Thorin's older and he can't have kids. Oh, okay, he's in his 40s. You know, like, that's still wrong. That's still gross, you know, betting a teenager, betting a 20-year-old kind of thing for me. It's just like, 40 years old? I've never caught that line before.
Yeah.
So this time, dude, like, I had a reaction at home. I'm like sitting there on my computer. I'm just like, ugh,
Yeah.
ugh. It's like I thought about Rhea for a second or something.
Oh, I'm so happy that she's back.
Her and her goddamn knobbly knees.
April in the chat says, hey guys, I'm in the middle of something, so I can't join you, but I just wanted to say hi and thanks for all the good content. Thank you, April. Thanks for popping in and giving the kind words. Definitely appreciated. And yeah, definitely appreciate the comment, but also I just wanted to bring it back to Rhea because...
No, we don't need to. Anyways, moving on. Roland asks if she saw the Coffin Hunters, and specifically DePape. She shakes her head. Roland asks if she knows the game Castles. She says her father showed her when she was younger. He explains how the red and white pieces build screens and try not to break cover first, but creep toward each other. She says the first one around their hillock is vulnerable. He says in life too, but they've almost counted everything that they can and keep cover. And if they moved on to counting something like horses or oxen on the drop, that is to break cover and be vulnerable. Susan says that there is no oxen, and he says that there is, and she asks where, and he says the Rocking H, and she says that belongs to Laszlo Reimer, Kimba's brother, Kimba Reimer. He says they received a message, and she asks from who, and he says it's best that she doesn't know. The message led him to believe that there may be some answers here at Citgo. She asks if what is out there will help him know more about what happened to her dad. He says he doesn't know, but he wants to count something that matters and not be seen doing it. She takes his hand and says, come on, I know a path. I love the castles analogy and how it's playing out here. I kind of wish I could learn how to play this game. It just like we got obsessed with Hearts after Hearts in Atlantis. I'm kind of like,
yeah,
dude, Castle sounds like a fun game.
Yeah,
you know?
but isn't it just chess? Like that's what I always figured is like this world's version of chess. Like
Yeah.
it sounds enough like chess that I assume that's probably what.
It's pretty close, but I think that there is something like a hillock, you know, like cover might be like the pawns maybe or something.
Yeah, that's like kind of what I always figured.
Yeah, I don't know. I picture something a little bit different, you know? Like Watch Me is different than poker,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
There's something different there, right?
But there is also similar. I think it's close enough to chess. It would be my guess. It's probably a little bit different, but I
Yeah.
would say it's probably very similar too. That's my guess.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know.
My next note here, I love Susan here, tough girl. She's just ready to help, jump in, like she realizes the stakes and everything like that. And she's like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, yeah. Then my notes. So Reimer's brother has the oxen. Of course, we know that he is the primary Farsenite, which is the word I made up there for this. In this entire town, many others are involved, but it was made clear that Kimba is the primary trader.
Yeah.
So it would kind of make sense that the oxen are, probably, I mean, they're mythical to Gilead folks, so it's like these are going to be very valuable animals.
Absolutely.
So wouldn't it make sense that a friend or relative of Kimber Reimer is who ends up with them, right?
Yeah.
It's like, God damn it. So we had a cliffhanger about the pigeon message, what the pigeon message was, and here's another tease to what it was, but we're still not being told. Goddamn Stephen King.
I know, keeping us in the dark.
He usually doesn't do that this long. Like, I almost forgot, like, that we were waiting on that.
Yeah.
Because Roland got it, and like he gave a reaction, but it was the end of a subchapter. It was kind of one of those dun dun dun.
Exactly.
And then here now he's saying that like he's not going to say what the note said that he got from home.
Yeah.
He's not going to tell her how he got it. We know it's the pigeons, but it's like they're mentioning Citgo. Like, tell me what that note said, King. Do it now.
Yeah, I need to know what that says. Thank you. And then I just my last note here is the boys are running out of time. Like, we were thinking about, like, Susan and Roland as a couple and everything, what Susan's heading towards. But here we also got kind of a thing that King's reminding us that it's also the boys. Like, they've talked about it already a little bit. Like, we can't keep counting, Roland. Like, we're running out of stuff to count. And he's like, we're fine.
Yeah.
But here's another reminder that now Roland's seeing it. Like, we're running out of things to count. If we don't come up with something, then we're going to break cover, and that makes us vulnerable.
Yeah.
So, just another way for King here in the last, 3 or 4 subchapters to remind us again, we're not on one ticking clock. We're on 2.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You
And
got a bomb over here and a bomb over there. Like, we got to.
And the right or the wrong people are watching them very closely.
Absolutely. They're waiting for you to break cover that first time.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens when that happens is what my question would be. What happens when you start counting on the drop? Like, is some accident going to befall you?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
So, it's very, very interesting. And yes, indeed, definitely some ticking clocks. Good stuff, because the ticking clock worked quite well for book 2, and I think it's doing well here as well.
Yeah.
Although it does still feel like the clock is ticking quietly.
A little bit, yeah.
I think maybe it's getting a little louder, but I do think it's quiet enough that it's not like overwhelming us yet. But I have a feeling like it might be getting more so.
Yeah, King's definitely feels like he's kind of ramping up the reminding us of time passing, like giving us just a flat. Like you mentioned it a little bit. We'd have to get a notebook and write down all the different clues, like 2 weeks after the dinner and 1 week after the confrontation, and these different things, these different subtle hints to figure out exactly how. Then in just like boom, just like a month and a half, like a solid month and a half, when we should only have 3-4 months from when Susan went to Rhea to read.
Yeah, it says what it is, and I want to say
I think she says 3. I got 3 whole months.
Yeah, something like that.
She's all happy
right.
that it's not because she thought she was going to come down off of Rhea's mountain and then go to the mayor the next day.
And that's what good old Cordelia thought too.
Yeah, exactly. Like she was disappointed that she had to wait for the gold, and Susan was happy that she had to wait to become a ghillie.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because it's funny because up until this point, I would have almost guessed that all of King's non-linear time movements almost would have been like a way of trying to camouflage
how
the
much
time
is
to the
actually...
reader. But then here he just drops it plain-faced, where it's just like,
it's a month and a half.
Month and a half in. It's like, okay. It's definitely interesting. So moving on to subchapter 12, in the pale moonlight, Susan led him out of the orange grove and towards the thump and squeak of the oil patch. The sound made Roland think of Roland's back prickle and made him wish he had one of the guns that were hidden under the bunkhouse floorboards back at the Bar K. And that's, I said earlier, obviously Roland doesn't have guns. I think that was more of just like the global sense of like, have we seen them carrying guns once since they got here? Like, I feel like it was kind of almost an understanding of like they were going to put their guns away and that was it. Like, unless they absolutely fucking needed them. Like, they're not traveling with, they traveled on the road with them, but once they got here, they got their campsite at Bar K.
Yeah.
Those things went under the fucking floorboards, and you're not going to see them again because you can't get exposed. Right?
Yeah, I also got the sense, don't they even say that he hid them in their bedrolls? So it's not like they rode with them on their hips and kind of stuff. So it's like they were purposely trying to hide their identity of who they really were.
DePape asked that. with the old man.
Yeah, were they
You
wearing
know,
guns?
it's like, yeah, they have guns. Well, not out where you could see them, but I would bet they were in their bedrolls.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
like-
hey, wait a minute, you're not supposed to know that.
Yeah, but it's like, well, how many places are there to hide guns
Inside the horse.
on a horse? Like, you got saddlebags and you got your bedroll. Like, we played Red Dead. We know what that looks like. It's not like you've got,
You
hidden.
can't just do the Han Solo to the Tauntaun and hide it in there.
Oh man. So Susan tells him that just above a whisper, that he can trust her, but that does not mean that she is going to be any help. She tells him that she's been within hearing distance of Citgo her whole life, but can count on both hands the number of times that she's actually been in it. And the first 2 or 3 were on dares from friends. So she doesn't overtly say it, but I'm sure that she is now deaf to the sound of Citgo because she's been around it so long. It happens to all of us. If we are around noises or even smells most of our lives, we stop noticing. And it reminds me, and it's funny because as I was thinking about it, I think you might be the same. For a good chunk of my childhood, I lived in a house that was pretty much lined up under the airport.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like the planes coming down, and like we're north enough that like the planes are coming down.
They're coming in for a
And-
landing. They
and-
come down. They come from the south and go north
to the airport.
to the airport, and there is a highway that runs straight up to the airport.
Yeah, but it's
And so they follow that, and we were close enough to that highway.
and the thing is
The
like
planes were just going right over our heads.
yeah, and we didn't know each other, but it's like the house I lived in for a good chunk of my childhood that came over house. And I always remember when like people would come over that were from a different part of the valley or whatever, and they would react to it. I'm like, what do you? And like, oh yeah, I guess there's a plane. Didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
Or like people from out of town or whatever.
I'll give you an example. My wife, when she moved up here, she lived down in middle part of Utah where there are no planes.
Yeah, they're not.
You
They
know?
haven't been invented yet.
They're riding around in horse buggy and everything.
Yes, naturally.
Naturally, of course. It's olden times down there. They haven't seen oxen in many years. But she came up her very first time. We were just dating. You know, I went down there for the first couple times meeting her and everything like that. And then one time I brought her back up with me. And we're just sitting on the front porch of my parents' home. And similar to what you're talking about, the house that you grew up in, the house I grew up in is right there.
Yeah.
And literally we're sitting on the front porch and this airplane comes in and she's like, oh my God, is that plane going to crash? And I was like, what? No. What?
Yeah.
What? And she's like, it's so low. I'm like, oh yeah, the airport's right there. She goes, what? I'm like, I guess yeah, like the airport's like right there. She's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, like here. So we hopped in the car and we literally drove, because if you drive just like around the corner from my parents' house, there's a little bit of a hill, and literally you can look north and you can see the air traffic control tower.
Yeah.
From my parents, like just like I said, like around the corner from my parents' house.
Yeah.
And so she's like, "Oh my God, I just never realized we were that close."
Yeah.
And everything. And what happens is that in the afternoon you get a lot of planes coming in.
Yeah.
And so it's just one right after the other and everything. And so it really kind of freaked her out the first day. Is she was just like, they're so low. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, I can see the wheels on them as they're passing overhead. Like, they got their wheels down.
But what's crazy to think about is we were that close living-wise. Because that was only a couple blocks. I mean, Utah blocks are different than most blocks. But
Sure.
it's like we're only a few blocks away from each other in our childhoods. That's an interesting thought process.
That's actually kind of my note here, is that it's funny how you can live near something for years but never go there very much or at all.
Yeah.
You introduced me to a food place about 3 years ago. Where it's located, never been there. It's less than 2 miles away from my childhood home, and I haven't lived very far away from my parents at all. And you introduced me to this food place, and I'm just like, huh. I've never been here before. And there's shops. It's a strip mall, and then there's a grocery store, so you know where I'm talking about. And I'm just like, I've never been here before. It's just one of those things where it's just like, it's been there your whole life and you just never have gone there.
Yeah. Max says you're a Cautet but didn't know it. That's the thing I find interesting is it's like, there's a chance that we rode bikes within vicinity of each other.
Absolutely.
With where your parents is at, where I was at, like that, like I remember going pretty little ham on the bike at times. And so it's like I'm sure I rode my bike up. It's just one of those interesting things.
I know I rode down there a couple times. Because there's a really good grocery store down there that has a really nice bakery that has awesome donuts.
Yes, indeed.
So I know that I've been down there when I was a kid riding my bike.
It's just wild.
It's so crazy.
Also being dared to go somewhere that's a bit scary, that also reminds me of my childhood.
Yeah.
Like, and who of us wouldn't do that to a child, where it's like some scary thing, and it's like, hey, give you $20 if you go do something that's going to scare the shit out of you.
It's not even pay. I'm just like, I double dog dare you to go into that cemetery by yourself, you know, kind of thing.
Well, when you're a kid, that's easier. I feel like dares
yeah.
lose their power when you're an adult. That's why you just bribe them.
Oh, you're talking about bribing an adult, not a kid.
If you're an adult where you look at a kid and you're
gotcha.
like, oh, you're scared of that? I'll give you $20 if you go into that spooky house or whatever.
Go up to that mountain where there's supposedly a Rhea.
Yeah.
No.
So Roland asked her what about after that, and she answered that she had come here with her dad. And she said that he was always interested in the old people, and the Aunt Cord had told him that meddling in their leavings would come to a bad end. And Susan had was hit with emotion as she did, and as she was hit with emotion as she said it, because it did come to a bad end. But she doubted the old people were responsible. They reached a wire fence, and beyond it, the gantries, the oil wells stood against the sky like sentinels of the size of Lord Perth. That's a fun little callback.
Yep.
But also it is interesting because we've seen Lord Perth, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw like the giant, but it's like giant. What would he have been? Probably 8-10 feet tall. Not like, but it's like that's how myths and legends happen, right?
Yeah.
It's like a guy that's 8 feet tall, which is real. There are people that size. I just saw one recently where it was a guy meeting Shaq, and he was like 8 foot something.
Yep.
And Shaq looked the way to this guy that most people look to Shaq.
That me and you would look to Shaq if we stood next to him.
And it's like, and this dude's, I think it was 8'2" or something. So it's like, that isn't out of the realm of reality. This isn't like not Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones giants.
Yeah.
But the way that myths and legends work, though, is like eventually they grow bigger and bigger, and eventually they're the size of oil derricks, right? So
all you got is one of these hairy guys running around up in Washington. That's what started Bigfoot.
I don't know, man. Bigfoot. There might be something to that.
Oh, Tad's a Bigfoot guy, huh? We've never really talked cryptids, have we?
No, not really.
No.
I've had experiences, though.
Okay.
Missing booze bottles. That's all I'll say.
Oh, I don't think that was Bigfoot, sir. I think that was just the town drunk.
Oh. So Roland thought to himself, how many had she said were working? 19, he thought. The sound was ghastly, the sound of monsters being choked to death, and the sound of and he thought, of course, this is the kind of place that kids dared each other to go into, an open-air haunted house, which that sounds fun. He held the two wires apart so she could slip between them, and she did the same for him. And as he passed through, he noticed a line of white porcelain cylinders marching down the post closest to him with the wires going through them. He asked if she knew what those were, and she said yes. When there had been electricity, some had gone through the wires. And she added shyly that that is how she feels when he touches her. So...
Aww.
Yeah, getting a little... and this is why I love the way King writes, because, like, that's not a good line, but it's exactly what a kid would say.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's the thing is, like, that's why I always, like, not to get, like, on a tangent, but that's why I've always told people about, like, some of the Anakin lines in Attack of the Clones, some of the love scene stuff. It's like, you want to tell me when you're 16, 17, you weren't saying some really cringy shit to girls?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I say that to people all the time. It's like, what do you want? Like, he's a fucking kid. He doesn't know what the fuck. Like, not a kid, but he's like, he's not.
He's a teenager.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I remember some of the shit I said to people and girls when I was a teenager, and some of it makes me still like blush, thinking like, why would I fucking say something so goddamn
that's one of those things that keeps you awake at night is you're like, oh man, you remember that time I was talking to that girl and I said that thing? It's just
yeah, exactly. So it's like, and it's the same thing, like that's not a great line from Susan, but it's like that's exactly what a kid would say. So bravo, King.
If you could open a time portal, you'd punch yourself in the nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop yourself from saying it.
But it's just like kudos to, and I think that's why King writes kids so well, is because he allows himself to write in their level. Because it's like, I feel like bad writers or lesser writers, not even bad writers, but lesser writers, is where it's like, I've seen movies this way too, where it's like you got this 12-year-old kid, but they talk like they're 40.
Yeah.
Like it's just like the writer's incapable of writing like they're 12. It's like, oh, cool. So I got a 40-year-old, 12-year-old. Like, and it's just it takes you out of the story because it's like kids don't talk that way.
No.
Or that like polished and refined, something, whatever. So
I presumed that you would never make me a leader. It's like no kid would ever. Dude, you're an idiot. You can't make me a king. Like, say it like a kid would, you know?
And King does that well. That's why I think that he is so wonderful when it comes to writing children.
Absolutely.
So he kissed her on the cheek, and she shivered and said that she hoped his friends watched well, and he assured her that they would. And she asked if there was if there was a signal, and he said yes, the whistle of a nighthawk, and they should hope that they don't hear it. And she took his hand and led him into the oil patch.
I didn't write this down as a note. Do you think the nighthawk means owl?
Maybe, I don't know. Are nighthawks a real thing? I don't know enough about birds.
No, owls are nocturnal predators. There's not really many. I like raptors. I like birds.
I was gonna say, well, it wouldn't make sense to have because most prey aren't nocturnal. So a nighthawk would be a very starving animal because there wouldn't be a whole lot for it to go after.
There's
right?
quite a few rodents that only come out at night. Shrews are a big one. Mouses tend to they sleep during the day, especially if it's during summer. It's hot, so they stay in, and then a lot of them hibernate. So like that, but just I've studied a little bit of birds of prey. Yeah, owls are. I don't know of another nocturnal raptor aside from anything that's an owl, because they have specially designed, like their eyes are specially adapted, not designed, evolved into like seeing at night, but also their hearing is unmatched.
Yeah,
like if you want the hearing, man, you want an owl's hearing.
Yeah,
and everything.
I also do really enjoy the fact they can turn their heads around. That's always fun.
Almost 360.
But they can't turn their eyes. That's the trade-off, though.
That's why. Yeah,
they can't pan their eyes, so you can't have a shifty-eyed owl.
Nope.
So that means that owls aren't bad creatures.
No, they're trustworthy. That's why they're always portrayed as teachers in cartoons and stuff.
I think crows are trustworthy. But
yeah, no,
that's just me.
No.
So I can imagine there are plenty of people who are fascinated by the leavings of the old people. Hell, me as a reader here, I've been fascinated every time something of theirs has come into the story. I mean, partially because it does kind of replicate our world quite a bit.
Yeah.
But also it's just like there's part of me that just wants more. It's like, okay, this is like millennia before where we're at. Like this is like so far, but it's like it's kind of like that, almost like Dark Ages after the fall of the Roman Empire, and it's like there's like knowledge and abilities that get lost, and it's like that's kind of what this whole world is built around, is like people. I mean, people built Blaine. Like that was pretty unreal, like the realm of what Blaine was doing.
Not only that they built him, but then he was able to last until Roland and the quartet got there.
Yeah,
like the sustainability of that technology is that's unmatched to anything that we have.
Yeah.
There's that series that came out that said what would happen if humans disappeared, right?
Yeah.
And I think they went through, and one of the longest lasting things that's man-made when they made this series like 15, 20 years ago was there was a screen in Times Square that would still be running like 300 years later because it's on like solar power and everything. But that would be like one of the last things working.
Yeah, well,
Blaine worked for thousands of years.
I know the last thing standing, because I watched the show back.
Standing, yes, but actually, like electronic, like working is what I mean.
Yeah, in terms of standing, though, I watched a show that did that. It was actually 10,000 years. If humanity disappeared, 10,000 years later, there'd still be one thing.
Statue of Liberty?
No,
no,
Hoover Dam.
The Hoover Dam.
And I think that the way that it said like around like 5,000 years. Down the road is about when the curing of the concrete would be complete, because like it's still curing.
Yeah.
And they said that 10,000 years in the future, the only remaining true sign of humanity would be the Hoover Dam.
That's
which makes sense. So
that's really cool.
Tangent, but yes. But yeah, no, it's just so I love the I want to know more, and you know, like there's just every time we see something where it's like, what the fuck? Because it's like sometimes it's like, oh, Citgo or a gas pump, but then other times it's like fucking like AI trains that think and reason, and they're flying thousands of feet above ground. They could turn invisible to like.
In book one, we get a guy who's deemed himself a god because he has a gas pump.
Yeah, it's just...
And then we have Hey Jude being played at the bar that Roland walks into. It's like...
Yeah.
Well, wait, what? What is this?
The Beatles are Eternals. So
That's true.
That makes sense. So I love the old ones as well, but it also makes sense that there would be people superstitious about their leavings, that they'd be bad luck, because obviously it didn't work. It didn't pan out well for the old ones. So isn't it just super like humanity that you would find like superstition?
Yes.
I mean, how many people in our world today are superstitious about the Egyptian stuff?
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, we've all been, taught through movies and stuff that, you're going to get some kind of curse on you and stuff. And it's
You
like,
don't read from a book that you find in a tomb.
yeah.
You don't do it.
Well, unless it's got a skin cover.
No, then you definitely don't.
Then you definitely want to read it.
No Necronomicon for you, Tad. Bad Tad.
I have one. It's up there.
I know. Bad Tad. Stop it.
Although
Matt-
I can't read the symbols, I'd have to push the tape recorder to play and speak it. But
Max does say, this goes back a little bit for what we were talking about. Scar with Simber. Just tell him not to go somewhere. When
Yeah.
you're talking to a kid, just, no, don't go there. And you know they're going to go there.
yeah, reverse psychology. You're a parent though, so you've actually used that.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never done that to my daughter.
Doesn't it just make you proud to do that though?
A little bit.
Because it makes you just feel like I'm superior. You're a stupid kid.
Stop it.
It's true though.
No.
It's like they're so gullible. It's just like reverse psychology,
I
and
love
they take
gullible people.
They take it like a fucking fish hook. It's just like, there you go. Good stuff. Also, Aunt Cord being one of those just makes total sense too. The superstitious type.
Yeah.
Like it just makes sense for her. Like, with her worrying, like how much she worries about like Susan. Wouldn't that just speak to like her larger personality, that she's just kind of a worrywart in general?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like because like, let's just say everything went to plan. Susan ends up with Mayor. She gets her payout. She's living alone. She's now taken this house. It's all her now. You don't think that she's gonna find 10 things to fucking worry about? Like, it just feels like she's only happy if she's worrying. That's how I read her as a character. So it's
she might be one of those people who gets so miserable that she does something.
Yeah, to
have something to worry about.
cause some mayhem. Yeah, it's just some people are like that. Some people aren't happy unless they're unhappy, and some people aren't happy unless they have like something to like drive them crazy.
Yeah.
It sounds like her to me.
Absolutely.
What do you got?
You're next.
Yeah. I forgot. I still have one more. I can totally imagine the sound that they are hearing, like the gargling sound of a viscous liquid like crude oil, would actually sound like a choking giant.
Oh, yeah.
And it reminds me, it's kind of the sound effect you use when people get like their throat slashed in movies, like that gurgling,
Yeah.
but it's on a larger scale because it's like
It's around you.
It's the bubbling
It's
of
360.
Yeah, it's like the bubbling of like of like oil. Like it's just so it would sound like a choking giant. Like
Kind of
it's-
reminds me of what you hear with like a character who's walking through like a volcano or like next to like running magma.
Yeah, exactly. And
Kind of thing.
Yeah, and we're used to it because we've got movies and just different references.
Yeah.
But it's like Roland, like this isn't a world that would be a normal thing.
Yeah.
So
Oil's not something that is very commonplace.
no. So
I talk about that later when we get to this. I think it's the next subchapter. We talk about oil. Like
Yeah.
what? Yeah. But my note here, this has to be such a creepy place, abandoned with a lot of ancient buildings and structures and things that still work.
Yeah.
That's like I said. That's going to be the creepy part. Is when things are still working.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's it definitely would be interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love to go explore that at night. That'd be
You
fun.
have fun.
Electrified fences, not the most unusual thing in our world. But again, pretty wild stuff to see here because stuff that in our world that seems mundane is pretty extraordinary in this world.
Yeah.
Like
But
electrified fences.
Susan also just passes it off like, oh yeah, when there was electricity, it would run through the fence.
Yeah.
Like it was normal. But Roland's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that comes from her dad, though, right?
Yeah.
Her dad would have known and would have taught her that, like, oh, that's what those are.
Yeah, because he was fascinated with the old people. so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, love that.
I love that there are 19 working derricks.
Yes, indeed.
Say thank you, side 19.
Yeah, indeed. And I don't think I have to save this for the spoiler section just to say that Stephen King had not been hit by a car. So, 19, a lot of people try to pin that on June 19th, 1999.
Yep. Here's the
There's
19.
19s in these earlier books.
All throughout.
So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting to see because
Yep.
I pointed that out to people multiple times online and they're like, oh, it's because of the car accident. I'm like,
What about in book 4?
Yeah, what about the references in books 3 and 4 or even 2? Or like, yes, book 1 got revised, but the other ones didn't. So why is 19? I legit actually think King has kind of a 19 fascination. I don't know if it's his favorite number.
Yeah.
Because it shows up in other stories
does.
too. So, and like, of course, there's like the whole intro. I think we covered it in one of these book clubs where it's like on being 19. And it's like the age 19. So I feel like there was something monumental for him at age 19. So it's just always been a number that's resonated with him.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like it's not every number he pulls out of his ass in a story is always 19, but it comes up quite a bit. So, yeah, it's interesting for sure. Now the question would be is if he's always had a fascination with that number, why is it that he got hit on June 19th? That's an interesting question there.
Oh, it was bummer. I was hoping. Well, maybe
What?
he still. I wondered
When he
if,
got married or something.
I wondered if it was the first time he got something published.
Yeah, I think
Because it was in college. He's told this story before. It was in college where he's like the story. He writes it, and the professor gives it back to him, and it's just a terrible story. And so he goes and sends it in.
Yeah.
He uses that story in it, doesn't he?
Maybe.
Is that a true story?
Maybe, but ultimately, yeah, it could be something like that. I mean, I don't know if when he met Tabitha, like, it's just somewhere, because again, it's not just a Dark Tower thing. As much as we've seen the number, it's not. It's everywhere. Because I Leo meme it every time 19 shows up in the Dead Zone or the Stand or somewhere else.
He was 26 when Carrie got published. So
yeah, I knew it wasn't that.
If we're looking at first story to be published like in a men's magazine or something, maybe it was 19.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. So I'm also comforted that Cuthbert and Alana are on the lookout. They don't know it, but what we do know that there's crucial plans for the Farson line folks, and if anyone were caught out here, they'd be killed immediately.
Yeah,
like this isn't like right now they're the closest to danger that they've been this side of the Traveler's Rest.
Yes,
like because this would not be like what are we going to do about this? They'd be immediately killed.
Yep.
Like there's no question involved. So jumping on to subchapter 13 though, that's my last note.
Subchapter 13, here we go. The first time a gas jet flared ahead of them, Will swore under his breath with a curse that Susan hadn't heard since her dad was alive, and his hand dropped to his waist. She said to be easy, it was only a candle, a gas pipe. He asked if they use it, and she says it to make ice mostly. I think they're talking about oil here. The next flare didn't make him jump. He already adapted to it. He was looking around, and she asked if he had seen this type of thing before. He nodded. She says the Inner Baronies must be a very strange and wonderful place. He says he is beginning to think that they are no stranger than the Outer Baronies. He asked what the building is, and she says it's left over from the old people. She says there were a few useful things in there when her dad was still a kid. Ink writers that only worked if you shook them hard, and some paper as well. She points to the left of the building and says there used to be big gas storage tanks that didn't rust, but somebody must have hauled them away for water storage. She thinks it would be unlucky even if it weren't contaminated. She turns her face up to his and they kiss. She says what a pity it is for him. He says what a pity for both of them. And they look at each other in a way only teenagers are capable of. I love that we keep seeing Roland reach for a gun. Like, that's just like his reaction. That's his knee-jerk reaction to any loud noise kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of twitchy little fella, isn't he?
Yeah. But the first time that she's seen that, though.
It's true.
So, again, maybe revealing a little bit too much there. Because guns are not...
He's getting too comfy around her.
Yeah, guns are not normal, so that might expose something there.
Yeah.
My next note, also pens being mentioned here, probably ballpoint pen, or not ballpoint, but fountain pens. Mm-hmm. You have to shake to get them to use. That sounds like a fountain pen to me.
Yeah.
Something so mundane in our world, but it'd be quite remarkable here, although hardly useful since paper's pretty rare in this world.
Yeah.
So let's say you even found like a whole pack of Bic pens. Like, what fucking good's that going to do you?
Yeah. You would, your entire lineage, like 7 generations later, would finally use the first pen.
Yeah. And I mean, as long as those goddamn pens last, too.
That's true.
I mean, I know we're not talking about Bics. We're talking probably about fountain pens.
Sure.
Still. Yeah, indeed.
And my last note here is they all sound like this all sounds like an oil refinery kind of situation. Some old people stuff. It's just so much interesting world building here to see like that this is just left here because like we talked about it. We have hints of our world stuff here, but this is the first time we've ever seen someone like get up close and personal with one of these things. So.
And the fact that some of these derricks are still working.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's, I mean, Blaine's one thing, but like oil derricks, like to be working a millennia after the old ones went away, like that's wild.
That's our technology.
That's wild. That's still working.
Exactly.
Because that's a long time.
So going on, Susan couldn't decide what was creepier, the working derricks or the ones that had fallen silent. One thing was for sure, that no power on the face of the earth could make her come out here alone. They came to a wide lane that had no doubt been a maintenance road that split the oil patch in two. Running down the center was a steel pipe with rusting joints. Roland asked what it is, and she says it took oil to the building and that it means nothing. It had been dry for years. He drops to his knees and slides his hand between the concrete sleeve and the pipe's rusty side. She watches nervously, biting her lip, because if she spoke, it would be something weak and womanish. What if there are biting spiders in there? What if you get stuck? What would we do then? His head came back covered in oil. Dry for years, he says with a little smile, and she only shakes her head in bewilderment. Whoa, that's a development. She says it's dry and it's not?
Yeah. My note, I could totally see that in the dark, in this world, the derricks that work versus the ones that sat silently could both be creepy in their ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like haunted houses, like a haunted house looks dead from the outside is far more scary than a house that is lit up. I guess my opinion is I think the non-working ones would be creepier.
Mm-hmm.
I just think there's something almost natural. I mean, I know for them it's not as natural, but just whatever. It's machinery and it's supposed to work, but the shit that just sits there silently, dead for centuries.
Yeah.
Like it just feels like that haunted house that's like, nobody's ever in it. There's never lights on.
Yeah.
Versus like the house you see a couple doors down that like there's always lights on. There's cars that come and go. Like I don't know.
To see that all dark is just creepy.
Yeah, and it's just they're big, imposing things.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the ones that are dead would just be more creepy to me. I don't know why.
What I thought about when I was doing my notes on this section is I thought about like animatronic statues.
Yeah.
Like it's a Small World kind of thing,
Yeah.
Like it's creepy that they're still moving,
Yeah.
but it's almost creepier if there's one that's just sitting there. It's like,
Oh,
wait,
yeah.
wait,
Yeah. What's the
why, what, nope,
What-
Five Nights at Freddy's,
Yeah,
no,
Chuck E. Cheese, man.
yeah, man,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like it. Yeah, those are always creepy to me anyway. But yeah, if you just saw one, like imagine out of that context too. Imagine you saw one that got thrown away and you just saw it like on the side of a road, just sitting there.
it's just like
Motionless.
kind of slumped, like it looks like a person in a costume sitting,
Yeah.
but you get up close to it, and for some reason put your hand in its mouth.
Would you get
like,
close to it?
Absolutely not. I played Five Nights at Freddy once, and never again.
So I love her fear of him getting bit or stuck. It lends to the creepiness of the place. She feels safe with him here, but if he were to get bit or stuck, she would be in a real pickle.
Yeah.
Because now she wouldn't really have him, and it's like, what do? You can't go tell someone like, hey, I need help. Like someone's stuck. Like,
Get Alan and Keith
I mean,
Bird.
maybe, yeah. It's still, I love her fear though. It's interesting.
Yeah. And so this is what I was talking about here is like oil. Now that's interesting. The world doesn't seem to run on it like ours does. So what is it worth? What is it even used for and everything?
Yeah.
They kind of hint that they use it to, run their ice makers. That's about it. But
Pretty much, because didn't they say at some point earlier in the book somebody was asking questions to someone that was in the know, and they're just like, yeah, like some of them still work, but nobody knows how to refine it still,
Yeah.
so it's worthless. Like
Yeah.
you can't do anything with it. So
we use it just to run the ice maker and a few lights is
Yeah.
basically what they said.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's just kind of interesting. Like, what is this? Like what? And we know that there's something going on because the Coffin Hunters were out here during the welcome dinner.
Yeah.
Hiding something, and we're just like, wait.
Yeah.
What are they hiding? Like they're
Yeah.
hiding tankers. Oh, like what the hell? Like why? You know?
Yeah.
That's my point. Is like this world doesn't run on oil.
No, this is definitely from a bygone era for sure.
Yeah.
So then jumping over to subchapter 14, they follow the pipe towards where the rotted gate blocked the road. The pipe that she could see had oil oozing out of the joints. Even in the moonlight, she could see it. Went under the gate, so they went over it. She thought his hands were too intimate for polite company in their helping, and rejoiced at each touch, and thought that if he didn't stop, her head would explode like the candle, and laughed. He said her name, and she assured that it was nothing, only nerves. Another long glance between them, and they stood on the far side of the gate. So Roland getting a bit handsy here, and she is okay with it. Reminds me of the Deans a few times we've seen Eddie get handsy. Very strange to see it with Roland, though, because he's just the Roland we know is kind of Terminator-ish.
Yeah,
So
the only one we've seen him with is Allie in book 1. So
Yeah, and that even just felt like removed. Like
like
there was pleasure involved, but it's like, did he ever feel like a human in those?
no,
Or did it just feel like the same
going
as someone
through the motions.
Yeah,
kind of
someone that
thing.
would be drinking water because they were thirsty as well.
Yeah.
It felt like there was no like true like passion or anything. Then they went down the hill, and as they did, they noticed a strange thing. Many of the pines had been stripped of their lower branches. The hatchet marks and scabs of pine resin, which were clear in the moonlight, looked new. She pointed, and he nodded, but said nothing. The pipe rose out of the ground at the bottom of the hill. It was supported by a series of rusty steel cradles that ran 70 yards toward the abandoned building before stopping with the suddenness of an amputation. Below the stopping point was what looked like a shallow lake of drying tacky oil. Susan could tell it had been there a while because of the many dead birds that she could see scattered across it. They had come down, gotten stuck, and died in what was surely an unpleasant fashion. Seeing the work of the big Coffin Hunters, I remember being excited by all this because it's about time Roland and his team get maybe ahead of the game a bit. We've been privy to a lot of information, and we know that the Farce Knights are way ahead of our boys on a lot of stuff. So it's good to finally see Roland maybe getting close to discovering something. So I remember getting kind of like excited the first time where it's like, yes, like figure out what the fuck they were hiding. Cause like you guys are behind, man. Like if we're keeping score here, you guys are down in the count and you need to catch up because this is life or death shit.
Absolutely.
The oil acting like a tar pit. The tar pits of old in our world is kind of what I imagine there with birds getting stuck. Reminds me like the tar pits, right? That's how we know about like woolly mammoths and stuff is tar pits. So
is a huge part of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it just reminds me of that, even though it's not tar, but it's like these birds. It's working the same for them. They're going to like why they're going in, who knows? But maybe they see something, they think it's an insect, and then they go down and get stuck. So
yep. Tar pits scare the shit out of me ever since Land Before Time, where the dinosaurs get stuck in it. Dude, no.
Yeah.
Like there's ones in California, and they're like people get close to them, and I'm like, no, fuck that.
Yeah.
No.
Land Before Time. You're talking some millennial trauma there, sir.
Absolutely.
Some millennial trauma. Moving on, she stared wide-eyed and tapped her, and he tapped her on the leg, and she saw he was crouching, and he did likewise, or she did likewise. He pointed to the tracks, big ones. It could have been only one thing, and she said it aloud, oxen. Roland agreed and said, but they came from there, and pointed to where the pipes ended. And he said that they go, and he turned on his heels and pointed towards the slope where the wood started. Once he pointed them out, she could see them clearly, and she thought the daughter of a horseman. She should have seen it right away. An effort had been made to hide the tracks and to churn up the ground where something heavy had been dragged or rolled. Time had also smoothed some of it away as well. Again, we're talking like what was the opening dinner, a day or so after they arrived? Mm-hmm. I think the next day. They came at night, and there was the next day because then they met the sheriff, and he's like, well, tonight or tomorrow night was something. So a couple days, so a month and a half time. Yep. That's minus a couple days. Like that's some time for wind and stuff to do its work. But the marks were clear. She even knew what the oxen had been dragging, and could see Will knew as well. The tracks split from the end of the pipe in two arcs. They followed the one on the right. The tracks had been shallow and it had been dry, so the dirt was pretty hard. So the fact that they could actually see the indentations, even though they were shallow, meant that whatever they were moving was extremely heavy, and that made sense. Why else would you need oxen?
Yep.
And so that clues us in now to where it's like, aha, something heavy involved. We know there's been some shenanigans here, but now we're talking some heaviness, and now the oxen makes sense. This isn't just like we got our hands on some oxen, and it's just like a point of like pride.
Hey,
right?
we got some oxen.
We got oxen, and I have oxen because I'm a rich motherfucker because my brother's basically running this town. It's not that. No, they're functional. They're being used. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, that's what my note was here for, is that it says now we know what they're for.
Yeah, because, I mean,
Before, it's just kind of like, wow, they have like a mythical creature.
It still startles me because it's like they thought like, I've only ever seen it in books, and that's in Gilead. I feel like Gilead of all places would like, if something existed, they would have it, even if it was in like a zoo-ish type thing. So it's like the fact that these boys never saw one is wild to me. Like that, I don't know. To me, I would almost assume if Gilead didn't see it, it didn't exist. So, not to be like the librarian from Attack of the Clones, second Attack of the Clones reference. Now she can stop doubting that there are oxen in Hambry as well. You covered it in your section a little bit ago that she was questioning whether oxen existed, or that she said they didn't exist. There was no oxen in Hambry, and Roland disagreed with her. We see it seems the Coffin Hunters had not been good enough to cover their tracks. Again, this pleases me. They weren't good enough to trick Roland, at least. My next note, giving us the sense that the marks, though shallow, showed serious weight, has to be alarming to them. Easy for us to overlook as from our world, because in our world, heavy things are moved all the time. Where we work, right across from us is a big concrete facility, and they do those giant concrete pillars that are like, you need like
used for like overpasses. and
yeah,
stuff.
like it's like one of those where the big truck's at the front, but the trailer has a guy underneath that steers too, because you got to steer both ends. They're so
yeah,
big.
you gotta like turn at the same time.
Yeah, and it's where they have to like close like all the big roads off because it takes the entire road for these things to move. So they're massive. I feel like we could take it for granted, but it's like in their world, like think of their technology, like moving something that big and heavy. That's not normal.
No,
like
you'd have to get like 60 horses together to do what 4 oxen can do.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think of like, have you ever seen one of the wind turbine propellers
Yes.
on a truck?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ, man! Like I don't even know how that's
They are massive.
possible. Like I saw a truck driver almost get stuck in a situation with one of those ones because they're just so big that it's like you can't turn. Like that thing's gonna stay straight no matter what you do. So you gotta get creative. So yeah, it's just something to remember that. As easy as it might be in our world to move some big and heavy shit, in their world it's not. So for them to be seeing some of these marks, it's got to be alarming to them. Let's see. Will called her attention to something as they neared the forest, but she had to get down on her hands and knees to see it, and she marveled at how sharp his eyes were, almost supernaturally. They were boot tracks, not fresh, but fresher than the oxen and wheel rut marks. So that kind of makes me think that the Coffin Hunters' work may have been after the moving of stuff, which makes sense because Jonas told him to go cover
it.
the stuff, not move shit around. So that kind of makes sense. Roland said that some of the tracks that they belonged to the one with the cape, Reynolds. Susan doubted that he could know that, and he looked surprised at her and laughed and said he can say that it was him because he walks with his left foot turned in a little, and he points out to in the tracks. He then laughed and said he laughed at the way that she looked at him. And then he told her it wasn't sorcery, it was only trailcraft, which that's a fun word.
Love it.
She asked how he could know so much so young and asked who he was. They stood and he looked down at her because he was only slightly taller than she was. He then tells her that he is not Will but Roland, and tells her that she now has his life in her hands. And he said that he didn't mind, but the problem was that her life can now be in danger as well, and said that she must keep it deadly secret. She repeats the name and he asks which she likes better, and she says his real name, and that it was a name with some nobility. He grinned with relief, and the grin made him look young again. She raised herself up and kissed him, and it started closed mouth, but it didn't stay that way. The kiss turned into some second base stuff, and even got into some third base stuff. She wanted him in every way, and that she was for him and he was for her. Then she thought it was Ka, and Ka was like a wind, and she would go with it willingly, leaving all honor and promises behind. She opened her mouth to tell him as much when the queer but utterly pervasive sensation enfolded her, that they were being watched. She stepped back from Roland, her heels rocking unsteadily on the half-eroded tracks, and then she said aloud, "Get out, ye old bitch. If ye be spying on us in some way, I know not how, get thee gone." So that's comforting, right? Because we've all had that feel of being watched, right?
Being watched.
Yeah, I know that's a movie trope too, but I feel like we've all, even if you're just in a room with a lot of different people and someone's staring at you, you feel it. So I can only imagine what that's like when you're in like a outdoor haunted house, seemingly alone.
Oh yeah,
like that would be pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we have spent plenty of time marveling at Roland's vision and how much sharper would it be in his youth. You know, 'cause his eyes are pretty sharp older, but like who of us was not better vision-wise as children than we are now?
I wear glasses, me.
Well, your eyes may have been better as a kid than they are now, though.
That's absolutely true.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
it's like if his eyes are like crazy,
That's what I'm saying. Is like I
Yeah.
wear glasses now. My eyes are much worse than they were when I was a kid.
It's pretty normal.
Yeah.
So it's like, my God, he's almost like got superhuman vision. Like imagine what that's like when he's 14.
Yeah, and that's where my note comes in. Is like this is insane to think about, like, how much sharper it is that in like when he's like in this tracking mode. Usually we get examples of vision being used to look at things that are far off, but here he's looking at something that's on the ground. The amount of detail that he probably knows like, oh, he's got a nail stuck in the bottom of his boot, shit like that. Like his eyes for this trailcraft is the word that King uses, are so sharp for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So trailcraft or not, that's so fucking cool. It's our soft, flabby world. We might not even clock that Reynolds walks with 1 foot interned.
Yeah.
But Roland notices that, but now is putting that information to use, and figuring out his tracks because of that. So it's just so fucking badass.
Absolutely.
I love it. But him revealing his name to her, I remember.
Oh boy.
I remember being very uncomfortable about this. Not that I don't trust her, but like I said last episode, I think I was nervous about one of the boys slipping and saying the wrong name at the wrong time, and that's how they're going to get exposed.
Yep.
So how much more dangerous now to have a love-struck, untrained civilian girl now being let in on the secret? Like, you know, when I was like,
Yep.
I said it last episode, like, I was just worried that some Cuthbert would be, oh, hey, Roland. Oh, shit. But it's like, he's at least disciplined. He's been trained, beaten by court since he was a boy. But Susan is not. So her to know now, oh, my God, makes me nervous. And there it is. All resistance to Ka and holding to honor is now gone. The will they, won't they, sure feels like it's over now, and the answer is they will, to whatever end.
Yeah, we kind of got the sense from Susan here, like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, all the fighting that she's been doing about it, it's
Done.
gone. So
Yeah.
but it is interrupted before she can vocalize her full acceptance to him because she senses Rhea. I remember being happy about this. Voyeurism is creepy, but in the normalest of circumstances, but voyeurism by a witch through some magical object, that is just even more like terrible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Goddamn Rhea.
Yep. Absolutely. That's what I've been saying.
She is a lovable character.
No, she's not. Stop it. Hashtag Tad is terrible. Don't ever say that again.
Oh, again, because she just at least she embraces the witchiness, right?
Stop. Just stop.
All right.
Our last subchapter 15, unfortunately falls to me, and it's one with Rhea, which is just...
It's a short one, though.
Luckily, it is short. On the hill of the Cöos, Rhea drew back from the glass, cursing in a voice so low she sounded like her snake. She didn't know what Susan had said, as no sound come from the glass, but she knew that the girl had sensed her. The glass had flashed a brilliant pink and then gone dark. None of the passes of her hand made it come back to life again. She says, fine, let it be so, giving up. She remembers the wretched prissy girl standing hypnotized in her doorway, and what she told her to do after she lost her maidenhead, and she began to grin. All her good humor was restored thinking about if Susan lost it to the boy instead of the mare. She sat in the shadows of her stinking hut and began to cackle. My only note here is shudders. I need a shower. Yeah.
David said, I heard a song about her, some heavy metal number. I don't remember the name, but it's probably something having to do with her name, Rhea.
Yeah.
Rhea song. That sounds fun.
Max says dark joke, but he says it would be ironic if Stephen King had been hit by a Ford Ka. I mean, in Boston it was. Ka.
Yeah. So no sound almost makes the images in the glass seem more creepy, right? It's creepy either way, but to see them and not hear them just strikes me as super creepy. I get people that are deaf, that's normal, but for most of us, that feels very unnatural, and there's just something about it that's
Watch a movie on mute.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
But it's even worse because like I don't feel like it'd be like shot, air quotes, cinematically. Like I feel like with this eye of this glass, it would be like a weird, like unnatural, like the way movies portray it. It's always like if you see a serial killer recording someone from the distance, like what that looks like is what I feel like
The choppy,
it's at a weird angle, like just that's what I feel like she's
There's
seeing,
branches
right?
covering half the screen.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's probably what she's seeing. Like it's not going to be like this nice, beautiful Steven Spielberg frame. Like
Yeah.
it just so
There's mist curling around the edges, kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. Then a call back to the hypnotizing at the end of their meeting. That's interesting.
That's a oh shit, there's a bomb moment.
Yeah,
like reminding us.
Another ticking bomb.
Yep.
Also,
This one's not a time bomb though. This one's a circumstance bomb. Like you open the door.
Yeah. Also, the fact that she is thinking the comedy would be greater if she slept with Roland instead of the mayor makes me wonder if she's been hypnotized to like attack the person or something.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So it's like, this isn't good. Either way, another time bomb for us to be reminded about.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, maybe not time bomb. Well, at this point, it's a time bomb because Susan has given up all inhibitions.
Yeah.
So whether it's now or sometime soon, shit's going down most likely, right?
Yep.
She's given up the honor and the whatever. She's letting Ka
She
take
was
over.
willing to let it go.
So yeah,
Does she stay that way, or does she bring it back, and now she says no again?
she's been wishy-washy.
I think it's...
But it's all felt very like this felt different than
Yes.
everything we've seen before. Everything we've seen before has been very like back forth. This one just felt like very like, okay, I'm done. let go. Like, you're holding on to like whatever, you just let go, let whatever it is take hold. So that is it. Let's move on over to the spoilers section.
Just one little thing to cover.
Warning, spoilers ahead. Warning, spoilers ahead. Warning, spoilers ahead.
All right, so now we are in the spoiler section. Peter has one note here. But yeah, ultimately, this is the part. If you've not finished the 7 primary books of the Dark Terror series, you want to turn the episode off, maybe come back to it later after you finish the books. But this is spoilerific from this point forward.
I wonder if Susan's giving us a little hint of something about the world. She says the tanker is used for water would be bad luck, even if it wasn't contaminated. What is she talking about? Some kind of a plague instead of a nuclear war? Like, we kind of get the hint that the wastelands is like radiation and shit like that. We get the idea that radiation is the big thing and everything.
Yeah.
But we don't ever really get like a full confirmation that it was a nuclear war.
Yeah.
What if it was something bioengineered that ravaged this world, and that's what causes these monstrosities, and that's what causes the extra arms and eyes and shit like that? And that's what she's talking about here, that the tankers would be contaminated being from the old people, and everything. So
but,
I don't know. I was just kind of the word contaminated kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it could still mean radiation.
What I read that as is oil. Like if they were oil tankers, they may be contaminated. Where if you then tried to repurpose them for water, are you just kind of Exxon Valdezing
making oil water?
Yeah, exactly. So that's
watery oil.
That's how I interpreted it. Kind of like the Dawn ducks that are covered in oil, and they use Dawn dish soap to clean them up.
Yeah, you don't just use just water to get the oil off. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I guess that's how I interpreted it. But it also made me think that like maybe Susan has a little bit of that superstition though.
Maybe.
Where she's talking contamination, and
she says that it's unlucky even if it wasn't contaminated.
Exactly. So it's like luck. Like maybe she's inherited a bit of that from her aunt to be a little bit more suspicious of the old ones. So again, it makes sense, and I totally love that stuff. And then the spoiler section, I mean, we talked about the 19 stuff a bit, but I don't think that was as spoilery. But yeah, it's just
it's not. No, yeah.
No, but yeah, it is an interesting thing to clock those 19s that we find previous, because once we hit book 5 and on, yes, the accidents happen, but it's wild how often 19 pops up in these in all of King's stuff. So
David says, yeah, but by some group called Death Eyes. I think it's a lame name for a band, but they got a song about her. So
hey, I'll give all credit, because I can't imagine how hard it would be to name a band these days.
Oh yeah.
Like back in the day, it's like, oh, we're just going to call ourselves The Who. It's like, okay, cool. But it's like nowadays, like generations of musicians, and like now, like with the pervasiveness of like internet, like a band could really not be anybody, but they take that name and they release some demo tape on fucking iTunes, and it's like now nobody could use that name because even if
they have it out there, and if you do anything with it, they'll sue you.
Yeah, so it's just like I feel bad for people. I mean, podcasts, fuck. This show wasn't bad because that was 8-9 years ago. But like our new podcast, it took some time and effort to come up with a name for a podcast. And I imagine band names are the same way. Max says, if Roland has the horn the next time around the tower, could it be possible one time Susan is still alive, even though she's before the loop, because the horn was too? I don't know. I feel like the horn is very divine intervention. I don't know. So I don't know if Susan can make it. And ultimately, I think the question would be is it, can Roland be who he is with Susan's fate not as it is?
Yeah.
So now that we're in the spoiler section, we all know that the time bombs that are going to go off, we know what those all are. So
one of them is a firebomb.
Yeah, because I honestly think if Susan lives, I don't think Roland...
Why would he go? Why would he worry about the tower if he has Susan?
Yeah, I think he would choose Susan over the tower. I really think like he kind of does make that choice a bit in the fact that he does like the glass, whatever. But like, I think that if it really came down to like Susan surviving, I don't know if he doesn't just stay with her. The love they end up having is.
We're gonna have to talk about that later in this book, because I'm pretty sure there is a part where he looks into the pink grapefruit when Susan is still alive and he thinks that she's safe.
Yeah.
And he realizes that he's going to have to leave her to go save the tower.
Yeah.
I remember a line like that. So we're going to have to pay attention to that when we get there.
Yeah. And then David said, I dive pretty deep to find songs based off Stephen King books and characters. I know, me too. That's pretty fun stuff. And it is crazy how much of it's heavy metal, too, for Stephen King. Max says, I like to think Susan would do the Eddie thing and become tower-focused as him. I mean... I don't know. Maybe she's got a metal to her. I wouldn't say that she's like soft in any way.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that she wouldn't do that. So, and then Brock says, I've always assumed the old ones broke the barriers between Roland's world and the Toadash space, letting monsters in. The wastelands are ground zero, and the thinnies are leftovers from the accident.
Yeah.
They definitely did some crazy shit. I mean,
Something happened.
Eddie accused them of nuclear annihilation, but
well, he sees the bees and stuff like that, and just thinks radiation poisoning.
And he
stuff.
lives in the Cold War. I mean,
Yeah,
they all do. So,
and Eddie would be post Chernobyl, so
that's true. A year removed.
Yeah,
like not even a year. So that
would be fresh on his mind.
Very fresh. Yeah. So that'll do it for this episode.
Depending on how much Eddie remembers from that year, being a heroin junkie and all.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you watch TV and watch the news, you'd hear about Chernobyl.
He would know. Yeah, indeed. All right, so that is it for this episode. If on the outro stuff, if you want to subscribe to us on any podcasting service of your choice, you could do that. You can find us on Spotify or Amazon Music or Audible or any of the places that podcasts are. What was the old thing? Anywhere quality podcasts are sold.
Yeah.
Because that was always like the backhanded compliment that it's like if you don't hold our product, you're not a quality store. Like back in the day.
Anywhere the quality products are sold.
Yeah, exactly. Join us for the live streams here at youtube.com, as a number of people did, over at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications on all that, because YouTube will annihilate us if we don't say that.
Like the video.
Yeah, like the video. That's always fun. Because I feel like, blue lightning will come out of the screen and zap us both if we don't do that. The way that
you already called them evil, so I'm sure you're on a list.
Hey, I made it totally clear in the whole Skynet conversation. I will side with Skynet.
Well, I guess calling them evil is a compliment when it comes from you. They should recognize that.
Indeed. Then if you want to find the show notes or the hub for all things Dark Tower Palaver, it's darktowerpalaver.com. If you want to support the show, it's Patreon at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. And if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know the ways to do that. Go ahead and send us your love letters to Rhea and Flag. We'll read those.
Just stop it. Email us, not that stuff, show@darktowerpalaver.com. Check out our social medias. We got Twitter. It's @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. And then our Blue Sky is @darktowerpalaver.bsky.social. And then our Facebook is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Our Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces. And then our merchandise is available at tpublic.com/users/darktowerpalaver.
Yes, indeed. And like I said, we are now 45% of the way through this book.
Hey.
We'll keep tracking that as we move on through. But we'll be back in a fortnight from now for our next roundtable, which there's some nice big stuff to talk about. A lot of happenings in the Stephen King world.
Yeah.
So join us in a couple weeks. I think it's August 10th. Yes, August 10th, we'll be back for our roundtable. And, of course, we'll be back to Wizard and Glass, the second episode of August. So we'll sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
Oi.
All right, everyone. I think I forgot the oi in the last episode. Nobody's reached out to me about it yet, but I thought about it after I posted it. So I thought about it. I'm like, I just need to hit the oi button while we're actually recording so I don't have to put it in post. But yeah, thank you all for joining us here in the chat. You guys are awesome. Love having you part of the conversation. And of course, no worries. I know that I almost read a spoiler. That's totally fine. It happens, but because it's just
shit. I almost spoiled something.
Yeah, you almost did too. It's just,
Woo!
It happens. Sometimes we get a little bit flabby on the book clubs. We try to keep it spoiler free as possible. But yeah, thank y'all for joining us, being part of the conversation. It's wonderful.
Brocky says you have to hit it twice to make up for it.
Well, I could do it here, but the podcast recording's already ended. But.
Oi, oi. Oi, oi, oi.
It's just oi, oi, oi echoes everywhere.
Yep.
That's how a Billy Bumper gets dish ragged, though.
You suck.
All right, guys. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Come back for Geekery Bites if you want.
Or yeah, Geekery Bites too. In about 15 minutes.
We're talking Deadpool and Wolverine.
Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.